I am calling this meeting to order of the Sherborn Conservation Commission, October 28th, 7:15 p.m. And just starting with, is there anything that needs to be added to the agenda that could not have been anticipated 48 hours in advance?
Nope.
You need to move, as we learned, you need to open the meeting with a vote. Before you
When
even
did we learn?
do-
Sorry, did we learn that on that
Yes.
that procedural meeting?
Exactly. I move that we open the meeting.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
And Cindy?
Aye.
Thank you.
Question, if the
All right.
meeting isn't open, how can you make a motion?
You can go talk to the lawyers.
I was just gonna say, ask the lawyers.
Come on, I just had.
No, but
Oh, I guess you are a lawyer.
We're kind of stuck in an infinite loop, aren't we? Chicken or the egg?
The only thing I'll say on the matter is it doesn't really matter.
No.
I have no
And
changes to the agenda.
Well, okay, so is there anything that needs to be added to the agenda that could not have been anticipated 48 hours in advance?
Nope.
Wonderful. All right, so let's see. We always start off our meeting with a poetry reading, and I will, does anybody have anything they want to share?
Not tonight.
Okay. Well, because I was thinking about this, because of course I was rushing around making dinner for everybody and doing everything else, so I didn't have time to, calmly peruse and find a poem. But I thought, one of the essential elements of nature is the fact that it cannot be really controlled or predicted, no matter what human beings do to fool themselves into believing otherwise. And therefore, in the interests of chaos, I'm just going to pick a poem. So this is Rain in Ohio. Actually, you know what? I'm lying. It's the University Hospital, Boston. So I was going to try to change it because I thought, oh, that's not the one I want, but I have to honor what I said, which is letting the world pick it. The trees on the hospital lawn are lush and thriving. They too are getting the best of care, like you and the anonymous many in the clean rooms high above this city, where day and night the doctors keep arriving, where intricate machines chart with cool devotion the murmur of the blood, the slow patching up a bone, the despair of the mind. When I come to visit and we walk out into the light of a summer day, we sit under the trees, buckeyes, a sycamore, and one black walnut brooding high over a hedge of lilacs, as old as the red brick building behind them, the original hospital built before the Civil War. We sit on the lawn together holding hands while you tell me you are better. How many young men, I wonder, came here wheeled on cots off the slow trains from the red and hideous battlefields to lie all summer in the small and stuffy chambers while doctors did what they could, longing for tools unimagined, medicines still unfound, wisdom still unguessed at, and how many died staring at the leaves of the trees, blind to the terrible effort around them to keep them alive. I look into your eyes, this is heavy, which are sometimes green and sometimes gray and sometimes full of humor but often not, and tell myself you are better, because my life without you would be a place of parched and broken trees. Later, walking the corridors down to the street, I turn and step inside an empty room. Yesterday, someone was here with a gasping face. Now the bed is made all new. The machines have been rolled away. The silence continues deep and neutral as I stand there, loving you.
Who's the author?
That's Mary Oliver from American Primitive, which is her Pulitzer Prize-winning poetry book. All right. There's some nature in there, and human nature too, right?
Right.
All right. So we are going to do land management, but I'm thinking I wanted to just beg a moment to give the agent position update because it seems apropos. So before we jump into land management, I just wanted to say, as evidenced by Anna here sitting in front of us, that we have hired our new agent, Anna Meyer, who's going to start officially next week, but is jumped on the meeting. And I just wanted to say that, Anna, welcome. We are thrilled to have you. We can't wait to get started, and thank you for coming.
Nice.
So
Nice to see you.
All right, so everybody, Anna Meyer is going to be our new conservation agent. We're very excited about it. Okay, so land management, where are we with that update?
Anna, I so look forward to meeting you and talking with you about some land management issues. Glad you're here. I'm not going to just read over what I gave you. I've worked on it pretty carefully, but I do have an update and an addition. I talked with Ed Barry, actually 5:30 just this evening. Been trying to reach him for 2 days. He reports that he hasn't finished everything. He's done all the borders. He's done all the mowing that he will. He says the fields look good. He's very pleased with what DPW did on the schoolhouse, Hope Still. And he reports, unfortunately, that the summer, which was so good for all our flowers growing, of course, was very good for bittersweet and everything else growing. He says most of what he did in the way of wall clearing last spring is a mess again. And even with a significant budget remaining, there's no way that he can deal with the bittersweet on the Barber walls and finish the Hope Still walls at Mill Street, which I hope that he would be able to. I told him to deal with Barber as a first priority because we've spent more time on that. And then we can deal with the Hope Still walls in the spring, if depending on the finances. The addition, he also told me about Hidden Meadow. Hidden Meadow the mowing has been paid for by Sherborn Rural Land Foundation, and he's been doing that once a year. He says the trees at Hidden Meadow have really had a hard time. They're covered with growth. A lot of branches have been coming down. It's going to be a significant effort to clear them. I said we didn't remotely have the budget for that, that I would talk with George Fisk about sharing the cost. And it also occurred to me that depending, and Jean, maybe you can fill us in on this, depending on what Peter and Lori say about Hidden Meadow, this may be an opportunity to go back to DCR for one of those implementation grants and have them help fund a good Hidden Meadow project. I don't even know if the program is still in existence. I tried to find out online this evening, but it wasn't clear. I can call Mike Downey soon, but that remains to be seen. And with that, I think I'd rather have you folks just ask questions and raise issues that you'd like to.
Well, with respect to Lori and Pete's recommendations for Hidden Meadow, they still have not sent them. They've been promised to me this week, so there's still one more day.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if there's some way to pair together some management recommendations that they make with a possible DCR grant, that would be great. I do have a couple of questions for you, Kelly. It says in your in your bullets, it said Ed sees no problem with moving towards mowing the field borders just once each year in the fall.
Yeah.
But in light of the comment you just made, is that you
Wouldn't
think that's wise?
Wouldn't change that at all. The problems are the bittersweet that are growing out of the walls that he can't mow. It's hand sawing. It's labor intensive. He has been able, gosh, it must have been 5 or 6 years we've been doing this, twice a year with his brush hog. He goes right up close to the walls. And yes, there is always some new bittersweet coming up, but he just mows it right down. And doing it twice a year wouldn't really change that. The problem is that he can't mow the stuff coming out of the walls.
Well, so with respect to mowing the fields only once a year, I think timing of when the mowing occurs becomes even more critical, because if you're not going to hit it twice in the growing season, then the one and only mowing will have to be we were just talking about this with Coolidge Crossing, it'll have to be when the invasives have developed fruit, but that the fruit is not ripe. So that, that means keeping a careful eye on things and mowing it at precisely the right time.
It sounds like that would mean mowing in the spring.
Well, mowing in the spring,
No, later.
no, the plants will just start all over again if you mow it in the spring.
Okay, I couldn't agree more. I think there is some fine tuning that we're going to have to do here. The point is that the borders, which were saplings not too many years ago, have mostly, there are one or two problem areas still, but have mostly come back to grass. And he thinks that doing it just once a year would be okay. We can revisit this without question in the spring. If the money is there and we want to, it can be mowed a second time. We can juggle the precise timing of it, yes. That's not an issue for today because it's all done. But yes, I agree with you, and thinking carefully about how this is done is necessary.
Then I had a comment or a question rather about, sorry. Let's see, in the report it says, Barber Homestead on a regular basis every couple of weeks, Hopestill, Leyland, and Schoolhouse once a year in the fall. But that reminded me that we were trying to hit the field at Hopestill several times to knock back the swallowwort. So I really like to stick with doing that if that's possible.
Good point. We'd also planned on mowing Leland several times a year because it was in such a mess. I agree, got to deal with that. We'll put that on the agenda for the spring.
And then it says that the Hopestill Meadow was done by Jeb Fowler, and
No, not the homestead, not Hopestill.
the Homestead Meadow.
Okay,
Are you
sorry.
talking about the wet meadow?
No, I'm talking about the lawn.
Oh, okay. That's confusing. There is a wet meadow there. Okay.
Yeah, I've called it meadow, lawn, field. Well, it's the lawn portion.
So,
And
correct me if I'm wrong. We are supposed to be maintaining a every other year mowing of the wet meadow. Is that correct? Are we still on that schedule?
I don't know.
We should look into
I
that.
can look and check on that. And is it better? This would be a current question because everything is drenched right now, and I don't know if it's mowable. But Ed mentioned in a different context at Hidden Meadow that if he has a good freeze, he can do a good mowing if the freeze is without snow. And maybe that would be a way of dealing with the wet meadow.
Yeah, but first, if you can, please find out from him when was the last time he mowed the wet meadow. I'd like to know that.
Okay, I'll find out. I believe it was not last year.
Yeah, I don't think anything happened last year. We were all in hiding. Those are my questions.
Good ones.
Anybody else?
I do.
Yeah,
I
go
do.
ahead. Go ahead. Sam.
Kelly, I was just curious because this is the first time I've seen this kind of presentation to the select board, and I was just wondering what the impetus for it was or is.
The impetus began a year ago when the Open Space Committee it was even more than a year ago, decided to stay in existence, even though the Open Space and Recreation Plan was completed and accepted, stay in existence to oversee its implementation and what should be some of the components of that. And it was immediately decided within the committee that the select board was essential. We had to keep them informed, and we would do an annual presentation to the select board. with the nuggets of that presentation becoming the annual report of the Open Space Committee and the town report. Didn't happen last year. And we have known all this year we would be doing this and buckled down a couple of months ago to shape it. The idea is that if they are on board and recognize priorities, it will be that much easier to make things happen.
Great, super. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
So I confess, Kelly, I didn't have a chance to look at your slides. Do they deviate much from the text of the open space plan?
No, but the slides are very narrow. The slides, the whole presentation is implementation. And we do not spend any time on things that did not get implemented except to highlight priorities for the next phase. Each slide only has maybe half a dozen bullets, and they are what we considered the most important implementation actions that have been taken or are in progress. They do not even touch things that didn't happen. But then for future priorities, for instance, you and I traded emails about this a little while back. I assumed that putting together a management plan and budget for taking care of the reservations in the way they should be was a very high priority. It was supposed to have been done this year, but couldn't. And I listed that as number one. You added education, which actually some other people added too. And we wanted to keep it down. I mean, if there are too many priorities, you don't have a priority. So these were what we thought we wanted to give to the selectmen as the biggest.
Michael, you had a question?
Less a question than something to tell Cindy about and others, since I don't think I CC'd you. To the Open Space Committee folks of Kelly, Marion, and Tom Trainer, I forwarded your email with something with my email responding to you about the mature tree issues and carbon sequestration and the importance of maintaining mature trees to them. And Marion replied that it's going to be factored in somewhere. I didn't check exactly how, but she acknowledged receipt essentially.
Well, I would have to say that because that issue, which I mean, I really appreciate, I don't think I replied to Cindy's email, but I should have and agreed with it. I don't believe the mature tree issue shows up in the whole plan anywhere. And I would have a hard time trying to put it into the slides because it's a bit amorphous and hasn't been put through through the Conservation Commission or any other committee.
Oh yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be there. I just wanted to at least pass on the info and the issue.
Okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to recognize that it's part of our own all learning about it and figuring out what to do about it.
Yeah.
I just had a question in terms of the slides and the items that are on it, and obviously the report that those slides are based on. Are there going to be, I mean, I'm assuming there's going to be points at which the commission will sort of weigh in, and this is really just kind of providing a structure for discussion of different topics that are important for the Open Space Committee. Is that the right assumption?
I sure hope so, Neil.
Okay.
Everybody understands that the Conservation Commission has been absolutely slammed this year. And now, Anna, welcome. You're going to make the commission a little less slammed, and maybe it will be possible to get into some issues that you've had to avoid this year.
Okay. All right. Other questions from people or other points you wanted to make, Kelly, about this?
Nope, except there are going to be a fair number of issues in the spring, and in the course of the next months, I think we want to consider how to structure this process.
Why don't you put it on your calendar, Kelly, to begin discussion in February?
We have to deal with the next budget before February, but that's not a big
Yeah.
thing.
Okay,
Thank you very
Right.
much.
thank you,
Thank
Kelly.
you, Kelly.
Thanks.
So Anna, just for your information, we have a couple of associate members. Kelly is one of them. I see Nellie Binder, if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly.
Binder.
Binder,
Close,
thank you.
binder, but very close.
There we go. Nellie Binder is another who has recently joined as an associate member. So those folks don't necessarily come to every meeting, all meeting, but they do. Like Kelly's involved with land management, and he's got his, sort of connections to a lot of other committees and town bodies, and also is our treasurer.
Well,
And
it should
Nellie
be
Binder's
said.
just, what's that?
I'm sorry, it should be said that Kelly was a member of the commission for many
Yes.
years. But, he's paid his dues, and really late night meetings are not his thing anymore.
He comes early and gets and drops the information and gets out. Bless him. Some
And
days I wish.
Anna, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say I'm happy to help with any outreach efforts as you get started on projects like that. So happy to connect on that.
Great. All right. Thank you, Nellie. All right. So what do we have up next? We have 2 minutes left to before we
I
have
have
our
a
seat.
suggestion, Mr.
Please.
Chairman. I think we would do well to nail down when the next meeting is right now, because we don't know.
Yeah, this is something that has been on my plate to get to, because I think, given our sort of commitments on the calendar with regulatory deadlines, I don't want to have to push our meetings around constantly. Like, that's not, we're the regulatory board that has deadlines, and so, but it's not something, I just haven't had a chance yet to follow up on it. It's strongly suggested we don't overlap with the select board, but I feel like there's going to be times when we're not going to be able to help it. And we also really do need to keep to a 2-week schedule, so that, the 21 day is a big, period of time that we have to kind of be underneath of. So at the moment, we have an 11/4 meeting, correct?
Right.
And then the next meeting would be, if we were to follow that schedule, the 18th, right?
No. It would be Thanksgiving if we did 2 weeks, but,
If the 4 plus 14 is 18.
oh, but you just said November 11th.
No, I
No.
said the 4th.
Oh,
No, you're right, Neil. The 18th would be the next meeting that we would logically do.
And is that something that, well, we have the 4th, hold on, I'm looking at the wrong month. That's not helping me. The 4th and the 18th, is the 18th a select board meeting at the moment?
It
it
is.
is.
Well, listen, I think we need to put it on the schedule anyway. Let me do the outreach I'm delinquent in doing with them. Is the 4th also a meeting of theirs?
No,
No,
it's only for one agenda item, the joint meeting. So it's a very small meeting of about 15 minutes at 6 o'clock or a half an hour or something. So
Sorry,
essentially this
which one is that?
Neil,
And
can I
November-
make a suggestion?
Well,
November
on,
4th.
I'm sorry. So whose small agenda at 6 o'clock is it? Not
It's
ours.
just the select board is just having a very small, limited meeting on November 4th, as of
I
when
see.
I was at the last meeting.
All right,
of
thank you.
theirs.
Thank you. Jean, yes, what's your suggestion?
Well, I believe that selectmen meetings tend to be scheduled for Thursdays. So would people be objecting to us moving our meeting day to Wednesdays? I mean, I know the Board of Health
Yes.
meets on Wednesdays. Oh, okay.
Sorry, my problem is Thursday is the day for me.
Uh-huh.
And I built my entire life around Thursday being a day that I can make the time. And I've moved things off of Thursday, and I don't want to move them back onto Thursday if I can help it.
I would suggest, since the select board is trying to do every 2 weeks, where we meet twice a month, that we just explicitly tell them that we just stick to hours, and there's going to be overlap maybe half the time. And if
Yep.
there's a particular issue of importance to them, then they can let us know, and we could also see if there's some adjustment that can be made. But
I would
that-
agree with Michael on that. And I would also ask if there is any seniority here, because I think we've been on the first and third for a lot longer. And the
Right.
select board has jumped around a bit with their scheduling over the years, I'm talking.
Yep, yep.
I don't know if there's any seniority at all with that, but I know
Well,
Concom is pretty much
can-
stuck to first and third.
right, and you know, they can, as is their right, as they're the more senior board, so but look, let's do this again. I suggest we set the other meeting for the 18th, and I, in the meantime, will go and have my conversations and see what we can do for a long-term plan to manage this.
I just have a quick question for Elizabeth. I know, Elizabeth, you showed me a selectmen's meeting schedule a few months ago that extended to the end of 2021. Do they have one going beyond that?
I haven't seen it if they've said it. I can ask Diane for it Monday.
Okay,
All right, so let's set it for the 18th then, for now.
okay.
All right, we're running a little bit behind on time, so let's do the request for the COC for 147 Hunting.
Yeah, so this is a certificate of compliance for a new septic system, a drainage area to one side of the house. There was originally an addition proposed that they did not construct. Everything is done out there. There's a retaining wall in that goes around the limit of the septic system with a fence on top of that. There are plantings that were put in that were appropriate, and some granite markers. I did post some pictures of that. If someone would like to share them, but the only issue that I had out here was that the grass is growing, but it's very sparse. And with all the rain we've had, there's a flow pattern that goes naturally towards the wetlands. And things aren't quite, I would be pretty confident that they haven't mowed it. Well, like you can see that I can see mow lines in the lawn, but if you look at it, it's somewhat sparse as you go down the picture there. So
It almost looks like seeding lines.
that's possible too. So my suggestion might be that instead of a full certificate of compliance, that we issue a partial. And I'm not sure what the impetus is for getting a certificate. I don't know if the house is for sale or has been sold, or but I don't know that it's appropriate yet to give it a full sign off.
Just because the grass is not as well established.
Only because everything else looks fine. It's just only the grass.
Okay.
Were they required to do any plantings, Joyce?
Yeah, they did shrubs around the edge. You see you can see the retaining wall and the bound on top of the retaining wall. You see all the plantings they've done along the side and the back.
And they look healthy.
They look healthy.
This is the second growing season?
I do not know when things were installed. The order, I think, was from 2017.
Yeah, this is Dan McIntyre. I can speak to that a little bit.
Go ahead.
I'm the one that did the septic design and applied for the COC. Yeah, they've been struggling with the grass. It came in once, and then they had some issues with it because of some drainage issues on the side of the house. When we decided to put in a dry well there to take care of the roof leaders. But yeah, they have been struggling with the grass. They're not selling the house right now, but they are trying to just clean up the permit, which is why we applied for the COC.
So Joyce, can you refresh my memory? What happens when you have only a partial?
Well, nothing really. Sometimes if you issue a partial, for say the house is for sale and people want a level of confidence. But if they're not, I mean, this can be held until spring if they're not selling it right now. But a partial, again, it just says that certain aspects of the project are complete.
And then if they wanted to come back when they thought the project was complete, they would have to reapply.
Or just, just send a letter in. I mean, we could do whatever you want because they've already submitted their as-built plan and photos and documentation. And if it were something major, like, I don't know, a size of something or eroding, well, then that might require more survey. But in this case, it's just, we need to see more well-established grass.
Joyce, did you also notice the silt fence that was down right in the wetland? It was sort of half of it was standing and half of it was mashed down into the wetland. And
Yes.
is that supposed to stay like that, or are they supposed to?
No,
take
that
that
I
out?
didn't want to say in my letter that it should be taken out. I was actually thinking that we should ask for a row of something across that area right there, Cindy, where the post ends and where that swath is, where you see the erosion control. Just something there because everything is kind of flowing towards that spot. And
I saw that. I noticed that, and
maybe a straw wattle across the top, and then once everything is well growing, then that silt fence would have to be pulled out, but it shouldn't happen now.
Is this, if this grass is having trouble, I'm not sure, you're saying that where the grass is having trouble, there is some possibility of erosion in some direction?
Well, it's
I
just,
think
That, or should that be just dealt with there so that we can just let the grass be what it is and that any possible erosion from that is dealt with as an
I think
alternative?
once the grass starts growing, the erosion problem, they may have to overseed it in the spring, or they may want to overseed it now. And I don't think it's, I understand the problem is probably because it's just been so wet and has not, it's just been hard for it to grow.
But
But I
it's
think
been a
they've done
number
a
of
great
years.
job with everything else.
Well, but it's so let's go back to Dan for a second. Dan, so you said that they were having some issues in terms of drainage, and so they did something to fix that recently. Is that?
Yeah,
am I right?
it does have a bit of a history here. They originally hired Scott Meadow to install it, and then he passed just before it was completed. So they had to bring in someone else to try to get the grass to grow. And it just took a long time to get that resolved, to clean that up. And then there was a puddling on the side of the house from the roof drainage, which was kind of always there, but they wanted to eventually deal with it. So we put in a leaching pit there to try to pick those up. But I think an overseeding, I think I could talk to them about that. I'm not sure if a partial would be okay, as long as you don't have to pay another $200 in the springtime to get the final certificate. They would accept it partial and go with the overseeding. But if there's another fee involved, I would suggest we just wait until the spring and see how the grass comes in.
If they're willing to wait till the spring, that's probably a good idea. They would have to someone would have to make a call or an email to trigger another inspection.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, really, unless there's a feeling that somehow whatever else is okay becomes not okay, it probably makes the most sense to just come back in the spring for the whole thing.
Okay. I didn't see any active erosion, but the grass is thin.
So, but Joy.
So
sorry, go ahead, Joyce.
so Dan, if you looked at it right where that opening is between the granite post and the shrubs, you can see that all that whole area flows there, and you can see some washout.
Okay.
I just think a simple straw wattle, nothing, it's not particularly expensive, just one right along the top of slope, will help things because the erosion control barrier is down.
Yeah, it's pretty well seen better days, the erosion control barrier. Yeah. Okay, I can talk to the homeowners about that. We'll try to protect that little section.
So this is not going to be a denial. This is kind of an unusual circumstance. This isn't really a hearing. We can't continue it. So I
think Dan would just withdraw it.
Yeah, I was gonna say Dan could probably just withdraw it, right?
Is that the best
and not
approach? Okay.
And the
Okay,
money
well-
refunded? I assume funds have been already transferred.
I believe they've paid the $200 fee, yeah.
Right.
Right, we could do, right, we could refund it, or the other thing is just administratively, we could certainly just kind of,
Could you just hold it?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we'll just
Yeah.
we'll have a record that you withdrew the COC, and we'll hold the money until you come back in the spring. If you don't want to submit in the spring and you want the money back, come back and talk to us. We're obviously not going to hold it for no reason.
It's in our regulations that we do not refund fees. So there's going to have to be some other way to carry this over to the spring.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then that's what we'll do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. All right, what is next? We're running a couple minutes behind, but that's okay. So we've got an RDA for 5 Linden Lane.
And that's Dan McIntyre also.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
A
Yeah,
surprise.
Dan, can you pull up a plan for this, please?
sure. So this is 5 Linden Lane. It's just off of Zion Lane, which is right off of Main Street. It's really, Linden Lane is really the driveway for this home. I think it was a cottage built back in the 1800s. It's currently now a 3-bedroom home. It's not on the market now, but they're getting ready to put it on the market sometime in the future, and they wanted to try to take care of the septic system now. So it's currently served by a couple of leach pits that were old cesspools in the backyard, one right behind the house here and another one over there. And as part of our work, we discovered a metal tank that the addition was actually built over. And this was part of an emergency request we had, I think, just last week to take care of that because it was a structural issue right underneath the footing. So that has been taken care of. The tank was pretty deteriorated when they uncovered it. They pumped it out clean, and they filled the whole thing with an excavatable flow fill to support the footing. And then we rerouted the septic pipe out and into the original cesspool. So this part of the work is done. If the new system is approved, we'll be tying onto that pipe and then a new septic tank and some leach trenches right in the backyard here using the Elgin Innovative Alternative System that was approved by DEP. So we focused on this area here. We've got a well offset here from the neighbor up in here. We've got the well offset here from the on-site well. So we're really kind of stuck right in this area here. We were able to keep the 50-foot offset to the wetlands, which is just off the property on the other side of the stone wall that marks the property line.
Except for the grading.
We are grading into this area. The system and the tank and everything is outside the 50-foot buffer, but the grading does go into the 50-foot buffer. It is all disturbed. It's currently, excuse me, it's currently lawn there now, right up to the stone wall.
So, I mean, it seems reasonable to allow this as an RDA, but it's kind of the thin end of the wedge for me, you know, because it is disturbance in the 50-foot and alteration zone, although it's temporary. I just wanted to point that out, that you know, we do have specifics about when a replacement system can qualify as an RDA and not. And this is just, you know, pushing the edge.
Well, yeah, maybe we are, but I interpret it as, you know, it says the work located outside the no alteration zone. I kind of interpreted that as, the new facilities, the new leaching field and tank are outside the 50. There is grading inside, as you mentioned, but we're not disturbing that part of the 50-foot buffer any more than it is now.
And you mentioned that there's a tree that has to be removed. Where is that?
It's right up here.
Is that by
Hey,
the shed? Is that
Hey,
by the
Dan, is
shed?
that the very mature deciduous tree that might be a maple?
Yeah.
Is there I was going to ask you, is there any way at all that beautiful mature canopy tree could be saved? It shades the wetland, which is right behind it in the summer. It offers a lot of shade to that wetland right behind it.
Well, it's about 70 feet off the wetland. This one, it's right next
It's
to the
a very
garage.
large canopy tree.
There's other trees down here that also, I think these
Yeah,
might
they're
be
all
pines.
pines. They're all
Yeah.
pines.
Well,
Is it possible to save that tree?
Well, we talked to the owner about it because he was thinking about saving it too, but we've got these well offsets and there's really no place we can shift the system to. We're already reducing this well offset down to the minimum 100 feet, where the Board of Health requires 125. And if you notice that it is a big canopy, those roots go quite a big distance off of that trunk. And I just don't see any way of a new system lasting here with that tree there.
Well, perhaps we should require a replacement tree. Although there's no way to replace a mature tree.
Yeah, you're not going to
No,
replace that tree.
Agree.
In terms of, Dan, sorry, I'm going to just switch gears for 1 second. In terms of the grading you're doing in the 50-foot, you said that that's all the grading would be occurring on existing lawn?
Yes.
Okay.
And we are proposing erosion control matting on that slope to make sure it vegetates without erosion.
I'm having trouble seeing this because my screen is so tiny. Can you just point out where the 50-foot line is and where the 100-foot line is? Oh, it's the yellow.
These,
Okay.
these yellows, this is the 50 and that's
Sorry.
the 100.
Sorry.
Any other questions from people? Joyce, what are your thoughts here?
Well, it's, as Dan points out, the grading that's within the 50 is within the existing lawn. And I think this one is on the edge of a notice of intent, but because it was an existing lawn, I didn't have an issue. My one issue with the site, and Dan alluded to it, is that it's steep. It's a steep slope. And with a request for determination of applicability, there isn't a lot of oversight after the project starts. So proper erosion control being installed, he mentioned some kind of a matting on the slope, down gradient there to try and prevent erosion through the winter. That would be very important. And I did make a note to that this might, as Cindy would say, be an opportunity for some wetland markers.
What's the slope back there? What's the grade?
I think he has it as you got a 4-to-1.
4-to-1.
Well, the proposed is a 4-to-1 slope right in here. And then it's essentially flat as you get down closer to the stone wall.
That is true. And the wall is a barrier, but hopefully nothing will get there because the erosion control will work.
Right.
Well, perhaps we can not only condition it with the conditions you described, Joyce, but also put it in writing that there needs to be a site inspection before the work begins and after the erosion is in place.
So I did add that to the conditions, and it's just a matter of follow through. Like
Right.
The last one we did like this with Dan, they did call for a prior inspection. one of the questions I did want to ask, Dan, the one on South Main Street, do you know if they put up the wetland markers? I think it was 67.
I don't know if they did or not.
Because we don't have a mechanism on request for determinations of applicability to know that unless one of the conditions is that they let us know when everything is finished.
Well, why don't we put that in?
I think I might have on this one. But again, so that I don't have any, I think this one is, it's all in lawn. There is one tree coming down, but there's no other place to put this. He's got all his minimum setback.
What I would say is I'd echo what Gene said, which is this is as borderline a case as you could want. I mean, ultimately, with an RDA, you're trying to determine what the likelihood of a adverse impact to a resource area is, and there's some risk, but I think the conditions are right. And I mean, honestly, if there was no work inside the no alteration zone, we would do it. You know, it'd be easy. But because it's like we're sort of on the precipice of a 25% grade, which is part of the RDA exception. We're in the no alteration zone, at least with the grading. But I think if we put in these sort of more robust conditions, I think it's okay. But let's make sure we get them in there. I mean, that's my opinion. If other people think differently, I'm happy to entertain that.
So with something like that, do you have to say after each condition, after this condition is completed, you need to report back to the conservation office, or, I mean, I don't know, or do you just say that at the end of all of the conditions? How does that work in an RDA in a case like this?
So I didn't, that's the problem with an RDA is once you issue it, there's no mechanism for following up other than that they follow the rules. I did something different on this one, and I think the last one too, is that I added a addendum to the order and did a list of special conditions. I didn't on this one say call after the work is completed, but I think I will add that.
Yeah.
Just so that one can see that everything is stabilized and that I've lost my mind, and that the wetland markers are up, and maybe it could be tied to the Board of Health. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I think it's a good idea, to put to say that after the like you were saying, after the erosion control is in place, after the demarcation is up, and after the tree, the mitigation tree is planted.
Right. I mean, the advantage to a request for determination of applicability for septic repairs is that it makes the system run more, not the septic system, but the process of permitting more smoothly. And if there's a sale, it's not hinging on a certificate of compliance. So I'm not sure what all the triggers will be in order to get an inspection afterwards. Maybe Dan has an idea. I'm not sure what would, there'd be no certificate of compliance or final anything that they need from us.
No, but if we don't comply with the conditions that you put on the RDA, you're certainly, free to make a site visit out there because you're in the wetlands. If the work isn't being done in accordance with the conditions, you issue a cease and desist and require the homeowner to file an NOI.
Then that's true, but we don't always know when the work is being done or when it's going to be finished. Because sometimes, there will be a delay. This might not get put until spring.
Right.
Or you might do it immediately.
So Joyce, there is going to be a condition that you'll put in there that says after erosion control is in place and before you start the work, please contact the office.
Absolutely.
So I would make another suggestion, and maybe people think this is overkill, but I don't think so. I think it's important that Elizabeth, I don't know if you send out RDAs with cover letters, but this one I think should have a cover letter which says, please read the conditions carefully and please make sure you contact the office.
Yeah, I'll get a cover letter.
So I'm fine with this project being permitted as an RDA with the conditions there, but basically if we're looking at Joyce's special conditions, just to get to the specific, where it says the commission, under erosion control, must be notified following the installation of erosion control barrier. Do we want to have an inspection? And inspect it?
Yeah, I just recommended that.
You know, when they call,
Doesn't get in-
we go out and do an inspection.
But it's just that, okay, I just want to make sure those words are in there, even though it wasn't so clear what you said,
Okay,
Gene,
I'll make.
that
I'll
those
make-
words are actually in
Yeah.
that sentence, and that we could put that erosion, and that you could say that erosion, and at the end of it could be another sentence that says that that erosion should be monitored over time to make sure, given the steep slope. And just let them know that that's something that they have to watch out for. And then in the wetland markers, last one, put that wetland markers should be placed there, and the commission should be notified of when they're installed and include a picture of the markers. And just add that sentence to the wetland markers. With those changes, I would move to approve this as a -3 RDA.
Well, don't forget the mitigation tree.
I didn't think we had agreed on that yet.
Do we really need a mitigation tree?
I'm not sure.
I don't think we do, but we can discuss.
I'm in
it.
favor of it.
I'm in favor of it. I'm with Jean.
What is it going to be?
Let's vote.
Well, there's a motion, so
Nobody seconded it, so I'll
Yes,
drop
okay,
it.
so- well, just Michael, just hold on a
Okay.
second. So let's just do it procedurally. There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, now discussion. Tree or no tree?
I would like to require a mitigation tree.
I would like to see a tree.
I don't feel strongly about not having a tree, therefore I'm okay with a
Yes.
tree.
And what are we proposing? What are we saying should be done and where? That I guess we could let the homeowner pick a tree and where.
In the buffer zone and of a native species.
Any particular size?
Actually,
about-
smaller trees transplant better, so
They do.
Yeah,
So what, 2-inch
But-
tree? Is that what we
but
do?
are we gonna specify like, a canopy tree and not like a little understory tree or what? Or we just like any tree is fine?
Well, I think you have a good point, Courtney. I like the idea of a replacement for the canopy tree that's being removed, so I would probably lean towards another canopy tree,
I'd probably
especially
lean
if it's
towards-
planted in the buffer zone, like Jean is saying, it will grow to, not right away, but it eventually will grow to shade that wetland area behind it.
How do you define a canopy tree versus any other tree? I mean, I'm partially leaning towards letting the homeowner pick what would work for them in a location that works for them, given that, but I'm just trying to figure out how you define a canopy tree versus just saying at least a 2-inch caliper tree.
So
Well, it looks-
a deciduous tree, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
Yes.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, but not, I mean, planting a tree that's only gonna get 25 feet tall is not the same as like a full mature maple. I don't know how many
Right.
DBH this maple was, but something that would achieve an actual tree height, like 50 feet,
Okay.
Okay. Is that enough specificity? I'd like to move on.
Yeah, as long as the owner has the ability to pick a spot and plant it
Yeah.
without
Yeah.
having a whole lot of,
Their choice of species up to within those constraints and location in the buffer somewhere.
Yes. Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all those
do we,
in
do we,
favor?
do we really need the wetland markers, given the stone wall?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Sold. Sold. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Neil, I, Jean,
I,
Cindy,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Just so I can explain to the homeowner, how many wetland signs do you think you'll need to buy on this one?
Specified as 3 in
I
the,
said 3.
3? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So let's see. We are reopening our hearing into 55 Farm Road. And I think the first thing that we do need to address is a procedural and or administrative issue that's arisen that's I guess a point of some contention, and I wanted to talk about that first, which is the possibility of having 2 open orders. And Joyce, you had weighed in on email, but I'm wondering if you could maybe present the situation and what you understand about it so we can better understand. Mr. Murchison, you have a comment?
I just wanted to clarify perhaps some new information. Joyce may have it, but Deshang did get a DEP number today after them losing the package the first time. They finally got it the second time and issued the number. So we do have the option of a new number. And he also actually said that they had no problem with 2 open DEP numbers at this time.
Okay.
Right, Joyce, is that what he said?
So he did say that. So the policy is that you don't have 2 open orders for the same project. And we talked about amending the well order only because they didn't have a file number yet, but they do have a file number. So my suggestion would be to wrap the well into the new order and close the old one so that you don't have 2 orders open on the same project. Because really the well is part of the project. It was asked for first, but it's still part of the house construction, and it's really not an issue. You're just wrapping all the work into one package, and then closing the original order. It doesn't
Well,
change anything.
I guess my attorney's not present tonight. He had some family matters. But it's not clear to me how that works with what's been approved and what was not appealed back in July. And, obviously, we all know that there are people who are upset about this particular project. And I want to just make sure that I'm reserving my proper rights in all of this. And I don't mean to be legalistic, I apologize, but there's been a lot of,
Okay. So
Right,
I guess then,
so,
you could just call it a well project and a house project, and it's not the 2 same projects. I'll leave that to the commission to
right.
decide.
And so the thing that I would say is that maybe for a different reason, I would also be hesitant to wrap it into one. Even procedurally, I'd be hesitant to just say, okay, well, we're going to treat that as part of that and we'll just go on. I think because I think there still would have to be some sequencing, but if Mr. Murchison's concerned about it for other reasons, I think those are something we should, treat as valid and try to manage it the other way. So
That's a valid point, because then he could put the well in without waiting for a 10-day appeal period to go.
right, and I think for whatever reasons, and it doesn't matter to us, they were broken apart into 2 separate NOIs applications for whatever reason, and I don't, but I still think even if you wanted to wrap them together, which Mr. Murchison, which you don't, but even if you wanted to, we'd still have to procedurally, administratively take it step by step. So, but it sounds like you don't want to do that, and that's fine.
Well,
So,
that unless you tell me that I'm wrong in my concern, and obviously my
No,
attorney here, so.
I don't think you are.
Okay.
I always tend toward letting, in legal matters, I let the legal parts of it sort of drive what I do. So I respect that.
And I don't mean to be difficult, obviously, I want to work with you all, but I just, it occurred to me that it might be best to leave them separate.
Okay.
So Deshang is not here right now?
Deshang, Francis is here who works with Deshang. Deshang is not present at the moment, no.
Uh-huh.
So, but before we get to whatever DEP said, I want to go back and I want to understand exactly, Joyce, from your understanding, what the policy is around having 2 open orders. So,
Well, all
can you
DEP
just-
says is you on the same project, you don't want to have two open orders on the same project. So the project could be a well, and that's one project, and the house could be a separate project. So we could view that as two separate. That part of their concerns had to do with appeals. And so if we consider these two entirely separate projects, and which he did permit them as, the well can be drilled. It could be for something else. It could be an irrigation well.
So can you give me an example of, well, maybe you just did, but
I can give you an
me
example of when DEP denied me, and this was a month ago. I had an open order of conditions that expired for the construction of a single family dwelling. So to facilitate moving forward, we filed a new notice of intent. And in my notice of intent, I outlined very clearly that our previous order had expired. We went into our hearing knowing we were going to get a close out the original order, but hadn't done that yet. DEP wouldn't issue a file number until we got that previous order discontinued because it was the same project. That was literally the same project.
right. So
So
in that,
so what was it that they denied?
They would not issue a file number, so I couldn't go forward.
so so when they say on the same project is defined is project defined as a unique file number?
Right. Well, a project, for example, for the same activity, I guess they wouldn't issue a new two file numbers for the same activity.
Michael, did you have a comment related to this?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have two DEP numbers now. If Mr. Murchison is willing to take any other risk that somehow, if we just proceed as two separate NOIs and two separate order of conditions, and somehow DEP comes up with some problem down the road about this, that he's willing to accept that that we're on the record as saying that if somehow they don't like something later on that comes out of DEP, that he has to bear that risk, that he's willing to proceed as is now without, even though there might be some uncertainty about how DEP will react to this, but I would just move ahead. He's willing to move ahead.
Well, I think what's interesting, Michael, is that they have issued two separate numbers where the situation Joyce is talking about, they didn't. And so I am willing to, I always thank you for, pointing that out. But yes, I am willing to deal with that.
Right, and the thing I would just sort of say is that to me, the separate file, like we agreed to go ahead as two separate applications. There's two separate file numbers. Yes, the well serves that house. I suppose one could construct a theoretical scenario where the well didn't serve that house, but it served another house. But I think, unless we're mistaken, to me, the two different file numbers is determinative of it being two different projects in their definition.
That would encourage us to just sort of move on with that. He's willing to accept the risk. We have the two numbers because we're not going to get through with finalizing this thing today if we spend much more time on this issue. I'm ready.
I'm not driven by wanting to hit any goal. I just want to make sure we make sure that what we're doing is correct and that we're not putting ourselves in any kind of a situation that will come back to bite us later. But I understand what you're saying.
I have a quick question for Joyce. Joyce, is the policy in writing somewhere?
Yes. It's under policies. I can send you the link.
Yes, please.
Okay. I do see DeShang is here. He looks like he got on his phone. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I actually, I did contact the circuit rider in DEP. She clarified about the two open order issue on the same property. And basically her comments is that you cannot have more than two orders as long as they're governing for different activities on the same property. And if it's like an appeal project, it's called a multiple filing issue, that has a policy which would be considered exactly the same activity. So in a way, if people filed and get denied, and then they appeal to DEP and they put in pending, and they're trying to assign back the applicants back to the conservation to negotiate activity for the same exactly activity, but the scope of work under the same number. They get to under that same number, they cannot file a new, but they're going to file a new NOI, but it will be under the same order DEP file number rather than to issue a new number. So that's what I can forward her email to you for your reference, but it's okay. It definitely allowable under our situation. And as I emailed after I received that clarification, and I think what we can do is basically after the well is drilled, we can file certificate compliance for that to close that order, and then keep the current construction, driveways, and the rest of it open until we get the house finished.
Okay. All right. So really, I would go back to Joyce and say, do you feel just from the commission's perspective that sort of condition is satisfied, that we really have two separate projects?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. All right. In that case, I'm having a little trouble recollecting where we left things off, but if we wanted to, Joyce or Shang, whoever wants to present kind of where things stand at the moment.
I had Shang submitted new plans, and I went but before the last meeting, and I had a chance to go over them, and I made a few comments, and Deshang responded to them. Deshang, if you want to go through the changes that you added to the plan.
Yes, right now I'm on the phone. I don't know if because I have another hearing, so I just finished, haven't get a chance. If I know Francis is also at the meeting, if he can
Sure.
share the plan, and we can go over the major things, the two things. I think based on Joyce, your comments, we got it today. I think it dated October 25th. So one is to add in details of the planting and the shrub to the north of the apron of the driveway. And we did add 10 shrubs. And if you look in, it's making area definitely filled it up very good. So 5, since this area is upland, I know in upland area, some winterberries, they can grow, and then a sweet fern, they can grow well in that area. So we proposed 5 winterberries and 5 sweet ferns. And so according to roughly about 6 foot apart. So in that kind of a range. And then in between, we can fill in hazelnut ferns. So either use a plug or transplanting wherever we can get, so from nursery. So that's the planting part, we take care of that. And then after 5 conservation markers, we use a surveyor's panel around the 50-foot zone at the turning point. And if the commission have, I know Joyce was trying to get some good markers with notes on it to be consistent. And I don't know if you have it, we haven't seen it, but we'll be happy to adopt anything the commission already have unified format. But at this point, we put the surveyor's panel, marker there. If it's okay. Otherwise, we will be happy to adopt whatever you will condition to use. There's 5 markers around the 50-foot, the 50-foot buffer line. So Joyce, you can comment on that. I think that's the 2 major issues, and we dropped the one hard copy, and you should have the PDF file. So we that's the only 2 left issues from the last meeting, and we just submitted today. So.
Okay, Joyce, did you want to comment on that?
So no, my comments were simply I wanted to see more shrubs there. I believe they're planting if you could pull the screen up so we can see down to Farm Road. I believe that they're seeding the swale and the detention, the settling basin, detention basin with, I, I, I don't recall what the seed mix was.
New England erosion detention basin seed mix.
A detention basin seed mix.
Right.
Is that like a conservation seed mix or what's a
Yeah, it's
detention-
kind of conservation. They have that seed mix, probably could have a little bit sedge and the varieties of not just grass. So they can have a little bit probably better uptaking and root systems.
Where is the detention basin that you're referring to?
Is it in the front and
So
around
circle
the?
it. That's outside of our jurisdiction.
Yeah, it's kind of outside of it, and but the main thing is that swale. Technically it was outside of the 100-foot buffer for the stormwater basin. So, but it's kind of discharging to the jurisdiction. So we propose anyhow to seed it with the same seed mix, and it will be maintained kind of molded
Right.
monthly.
Well, my concern is about continuing on the landscape plan issues, is that area sort of below the driveway towards the street. What's going, still don't move the screen anymore. That whole area below, you've got a planting plan for above the driveway, if you want to call it that way. My concern is what are we doing below there? So that's in jurisdiction.
Yes, as from our last meeting, and we also understand as a stormwater grass swale, you cannot live in like 100% that it grow without that maintenance. So you will get in different debris and so overgrowth. So it will require, if you go to Massachusetts Stormwater Management Handbook, they require regular mowing and remove the clips, because otherwise it will impact the flow and the water like coming off the driveways. That's the standard practice is to see the area with either detention basin seed mix or erosion control seed mix. Since the swales kind of have the shape and internal, it's like a kind of depression swale. It's not like a purely total one-way pitching swale. And we feel it probably will function a little bit more like a dry, small, skinny, dry detention basin rather than just the per se of a swale.
But for example, what would be the ground cover around the, let's say the tree there towards that walkway there? That's right, not at the one that's above, that's basically the 190, 198 and 197 and above. What's that whole area there going to be landscaped like?
That's right now. So from the last meeting, I saw that we were more focused on that. Over here to the south, it will be a regular lawn, and above the swale,
Well, that's my concern, is that I don't think that it's mitigation for the fact that it's natural buffer now, even though you're actually getting rid of invasives there. I was hoping that that would be as part of the broad overall mitigation for the driveway and such in jurisdiction, that area would also be maintained as some sort of native buffer zone there, even around that tree there and leading down to the to that swale. That area there would also be vegetated in a native way for wetland values, given that it's in jurisdiction.
Yeah, Michael, I'm totally fine with that. I only go with native plants anyway. And so if you have an idea of what you'd like us to plant there, just say so, and that's what we'll do.
Well, should we reproduce what's above the driveway, below the
Sure.
driveway to make
Sure.
some progress here?
That sounds great.
Yeah, it would be good. So if you can condition like below the elevation of say 190, 99.5, so between the two,
Well,
because 200 and then
you can even
199.
below 200, basically.
Yeah, between 200.
200
that's
and below.
fine. Yeah, that would be fine. So as long as Bob have no problem. So I would, I guess I probably didn't realize you guys were talking about, because I saw that just the north. Maybe
Well, no, I was
misheard.
Sorry, we miscommunicated. I was talking about both above and below. when I was
Okay,
talking
no, it's
about-
okay. So yeah, we can just adopt in the north to the south and spell out in the order conditions. So since we have all the species there, so.
Does that make sense to others, Joyce? That species mix should work over there as well? While
Yeah.
we're talking?
Yep.
Then, yeah, I guess my other points of that, if we can get that whole area there also, that's in jurisdiction, protected, like it is above the, and I guess that basically should have, do we need as a conditioning of that, should that be essentially, what sort of maintenance are we permitting? And even though it's sort of basically outer buffer, but it's in the jurisdiction, are we having any maintenance constraints on that area, basically left to be left natural on its own? How do we condition that?
Seems like if the planting is native shrubs underlaid but with ferns or some combination of native ferns, that there doesn't need to be any maintenance.
Okay, so there'll be no maintenance there, and we'll see how it is after the 2-year period of that everything is growing in fine.
That's great.
Moving on, I would say if I look at the draft of some of the conditions that was done, we would probably have to drop conditions 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, because they're all well related.
Right, no, I have to revise it with respect
fine.
to, yeah.
Then there's also condition 5150 in this draft that was sent out. Let's see, condition 50, right. We'd add there that there wouldn't be any maintenance. Okay, so we'll clean up the, I guess it would be nice to specify in condition 50 these areas, how we specify them, that basically any of the areas above and below the driveway that are in jurisdiction. Somehow I'd like condition 50 to be clear about what areas we're referring to there. And then on condition 51, that essentially there'll be, it says now fertilizers shall be used in moderation. There's no fertilizer. There shouldn't be any fertilizer use because there's no area within our jurisdiction that I think is being landscaped, unless there's maybe little tails around little parts of around the driveway or something like that. In lawn care, there should be, I'm assuming there's no lawn in our jurisdiction. I guess maybe that's the question.
No lawn in your jurisdiction. No.
Okay.
I don't think there'll be any lawn anywhere on the front side of the house.
Right. So, I mean, you could do it in front of the house, but I'm just talking about our jurisdiction.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And so, Michael, you're just so that I'm clear, Michael, and following you. So you're saying, since there's no lawn, there should be no fertilizer.
Right.
So I'm
Yep,
just going to
thank
change
you.
that to say no fertilizer, pesticide, or herbicides within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Right. And I think we have the fill and requirements there, since there's a bit of fill here. Other than that, once we clean up, okay, other than that, and make sure we get that landscaping plan amended, then I'm fine with all of the, with where we are.
Okay. Other comments from members of the commission or anybody else who wants to comment?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the illustration that you showed, Deshang, of the markers. They look like something that gets hammered into the ground and is flush with the ground. Is that what you're proposing?
Yeah, that's a survey. I think we are, that's usually we run into, and many conservations request for that, unless some like in Needham, as Joyce at the one side visit showed, I also worked in that town. They have their specific markers made, and any homeowner, developer, if they do that, then they buy from the conservation. So before that, that's usually commonly used. Yeah, they have like a hook and at the end of it, you cannot pull out. So after you hammer it in, so it would And then, so if we maybe live a couple of inches above so people can see it.
Well, we typically ask for markers that are very plainly visible and that come up to, at least waist height. And the reason we want them to be very visible is for education purposes. So I would ask the commission if they want to rather request that we have something that's more typical to what we ask other applicants for.
Gene,
Yeah,
I would
I
be,
would go with something more typical, like, either the signs at well, I know you said waist height, Gene, but the ones that I've seen that we've requested, they've been more at like eye height, somewhere around five-ish, 6-ish feet high, typically, depending on what they're on. If they're on a tree or rather than a
So
post.
typically for a project like this, we would look for monuments to be set, the concrete monuments that we've talked about. And they would be sitting up, you get a 4-foot monument and you stick it up 1.5 feet. Something that the leaves can't easily cover, and you
Right.
put a plaque on top of it.
Right. These sorts of markers that you're showing here are things that you would use on a lawn, right? So you'd pound them flush so that you could mow over it, but you'd also know where it is or something like that.
This
But-
is the type of a marker that the town of Concord enjoys, and I'm not sure that it's going to be what you've been talking about.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, each town is a little bit different. That's why
Before-
we figured we didn't get agreement before, so we put it on there as a reference, but the commission feel comfortable, can spell it out. And the only comment I have here is actually the area is totally on the left-hand side. There's definitely won't have any activities in my point of view, but it's actually, I don't know whether it's the best location to put this up there, but that's the commission's call. If you see driving in, is almost all on the left-hand side, except the driveway and the woods. It's not going to be lawn or any maintenance activities going even into those areas, except that one
Okay.
well, which should be well defined, and very limited maintenance would be needed. So
Sure.
it's again,
hold on.
We just want it to be clear
Can
to
I-
anybody who owns the property in the
Can
future.
Sorry, I've been trying to wedge something in for about 60 seconds here.
Sorry.
So two things. One, that's okay. One is, it's not so much about activity that's going on there now. Some homeowner might take it into their head to go clear some stuff over on the other side of the driveway, and they wouldn't know. But Mr. Murchison, you sounded like you were about to say earlier on that you were fine with whatever we were talking about. Is
yeah,
that
I'm
the
pretty
case?
much fine with whatever you want. The commission, when they visited Neil a week or two ago, were kind of looking at little round signs that would be attached to a tree. And I thought those were quite handsome and would get the job done in terms of letting people know for the long haul what's going on. But I'm fine with anything, but I thought that was a nice, good-looking solution.
Okay. Well, I think, Joyce, I think the idea here just generally with our markers is they're up, visible, can't be covered by leaves, as Jean pointed out. And, if we're attaching markers to trees, great. If we're putting in a monument that's concrete or granite, so if people like the look of that more, I think that's fine too. Joyce, what are your thoughts? I wasn't there for the site visit, so I don't know what was discussed in terms of the trees.
So the ones that we talked about, we're putting on trees have been for request for determinations of applicability. But for a project like this, for something permanent, the ones on trees can just be taken off. And granted, monuments can be dug up, but they're a little bit more difficult to dig up. And so they become more permanent. So if you put a concrete bound in and you keep it up about 1.5 feet and put something on top of it, those plaques that we had shown on the site are affixed to the top. And it just becomes a permanent physical barrier. It's not eye height, but again, if something's on a tree, it's that much easier to take off a tree.
Right. Then since the applicant doesn't care one way or another, then I think we should just have it be concrete or granite, whatever. But just, we can specify how high and what it should say.
I wanted to put us down for a discussion during agents' comments, a quick discussion about this.
Okay. All right. What else do we need to cover for this?
I guess a minor thing is that we're just following the 50-foot line versus just doing it along the edge of the driveway. For that, there's something that the marker should just be along the driveway. I mean, the 50-foot has some extra meaning, but I don't want somebody to think that somehow just beyond that is some buffer zone. That's, I would just consider whether we just shift the markers all along the, some few feet off the driveway.
My only suggestion, Michael, would be that we just want to pay attention to plows.
Right, whatever it is. I'm just saying that I just don't necessarily want to, the idea of somehow going in towards the well somehow, if I can see, I can't exactly see where they're going there.
No, I agree with you, Michael. I think just.
That it just makes more sense to just follow the curve of the driveway.
I agree.
To educate
Okay.
people.
So we'll make sure that it's offset enough that it doesn't interfere with any plowing. Okay,
The-
what else do?
So that's just, but that will, could that interpreted, you cannot even maintain the well. That's my only concern. Otherwise, it make perfect sense because I feel that well area need to be included in like in at this, not going to be regularly maintained, but so you get to be allowed for access and for some kind of basic maintenance,
I
you know,
think
for
that's
the well.
I think that's a given. I don't think that the sign, we're talking about a disturbance, not well maintenance.
I agree,
Right.
Michael.
Yeah, and I just think to Shang's point being, let's not put markers that impede the ability for some equipment to get into the well. For
Well,
maintenance.
obviously, right, that,
Yes.
agreed.
Okay, what else do we need to cover? And
Neil,
yeah,
If
please.
there are no other comments, I needed the opportunity to say that we understand that if somebody misses a portion of a hearing, and wants to vote at the end of the hearing, they need to listen to the recording of the meeting or read minutes from the meeting. And I have listened to the recording from the first portion of this hearing in order that I can vote.
Okay, thank you, Jean. All right.
So we just close it?
Yeah, so my question is, I know that there's a draft order of conditions. I don't know who's had a chance to review it. Joyce, how sort of far along is that draft?
I've got to change it to take the wells out and to update it for the comments that you have now.
Okay.
I will try and do that during the meeting.
So, because I agree with Michael that we can close it. My question is what are we doing about the order of conditions? That's
Neil,
I think we can.
yeah. Hold on, Jean was
just
talking.
to remind you, we're meeting again in 1 week. So if Joyce finalizes it tonight, we can look at it, and within a week we can.
Okay,
approve the
let's put it on
conditions.
the agenda then. I like that idea. All right, so I move that we close this hearing.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All right, all those in favor, Michael?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. So at this point, we won't do the findings. Let's finalize the order of conditions. And if you're okay with it, Bob, we'll just put you on the agenda for next week. We'll come back, finalize these conditions, and move to accept.
So
Or
Neil,
approve, sorry.
so Neil, my only concern is I am fine with that with regard to you all. But the Board of Health is meeting on Wednesday night. And I have asked for the last 2 meetings for an approval of my field change to move the well, as you know, 10 or 12 feet to the east. And the Board of Health at their last meeting said, and I didn't agree with this and I didn't understand it, but I'll report that they said that I would not be allowed that field change and to go forward with digging the well until you all had approved your NOI on the second project, right? In other words, the house and the septic and all of that. I don't agree with their approach, but I'm concerned that if you don't give me the order of conditions tonight, and I'm very appreciative of the positive vote, don't get me wrong. I'm just asking that because of that issue, that will actually put the drilling of my well back by 3 weeks, right? Because they won't give me the approval because you haven't done your last formal thing on Thursday. They won't give it to me on Wednesday, and then they don't meet for another couple of weeks after that. So it's just further delays, and I apologize for asking because I am appreciative of the work you've
No,
done.
no, you're free to ask, of course.
Historically, we have closed it and had positive findings subject to all the conditions that we've discussed. We've not always historically, although unless people want to keep doing it this way, that we
No.
have approved the findings and we know we have the verbal and the discussion record of what the order conditions are going to be.
Yeah, that is
Just
true.
puts more time on us to get it out the door, because once we do it today, then the order of conditions have to be finalized and signed and out the door in a certain time frame.
Right. Joyce, what do you think? I mean, I worry more about these kinds of things when there's some contention around what the conditions are going to be. But I don't sense that in this project. But just procedurally, Joyce, what are your thoughts about it?
I think we can do that. And I apologize, I've got well all over these findings. I'll just have to redline them and change that. I don't see a problem with, this doesn't seem to be particularly complicated.
Right.
But we
Okay.
do need a new set of plans with the landscaping noted below the driveway that we would get. I mean, often we've conditioned that we won't issue everything until we get the finalized set of plans. But that, I mean, we're over schedule, but I don't know whether we could do findings and approve it, subject to. And then it doesn't have to even be on the agenda for next week.
Well, there's enough changes. I mean, it'd be nice to review. I think we should review them as a commission. What are we gonna do? Any other commission members have any opinions about that?
Well, I haven't had a chance to look at the draft, and I don't feel comfortable. And it is only a week, and I'm sorry, Bob, that this thing that the Board of Health has told you, I've never heard of that before, but I can't do anything about that.
Right.
Nor can I.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe they're saying, well, we're not going to take it as two separate projects, even if the commission is.
That is effectively what they have said, yes.
So I would like to also look at the order of conditions, Neil, before we, bless this.
Okay. Courtney, do you have an opinion on this?
I think we need, given all the changes that we have to make to the order of conditions, that it would be best practice for us to do it at the next meeting. And that way it's completely above board and nobody is going to have anything to say about that. You know what I mean?
I do. I could have gone either way, but my straw poll says that we're not going to make it anyway. So unfortunately, sorry, Bob, there's not much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys considering it, even though you didn't go the way
Yeah, I
I
mean,
wanted.
when we have some latitude, we try to use it in a way that's least burdensome, but sometimes just procedurally, it's best for us to kind of stick to the way we do it. So
Could I ask a less intrusive thing, and that is that the commission asked Joyce to write a simple email over to the Board of Health saying that in fact it's approved and it's just awaiting the finalization of the order of conditions, because that might sway them.
Well, it hasn't been approved though. We've just closed the hearing. Just so you know, formally,
Okay.
We have a formal vote on the findings
Yeah, I understand.
after you close the hearing, so
Right,
we haven't
and-
actually done that.
right, and I think if the Board of Health wanted to reach out to Joyce and ask kind of what the status is, she can certainly tell them where we are.
Yeah,
That
Yeah,
there's sort
I
of
don't think that would have any real clout.
Right. So anyway, we're starting to really sort of burn over on our time, and so I do want to move on. So, okay. So in that case, we've moved to close, and then obviously we're not continuing the hearing because the hearing's closed. But we will, Elizabeth, can we put this on the agenda to review the final order and whatever updates to the site plan that Deshang is going to provide with the landscaping for next week? Do we have
Yes.
room? Okay,
It'll go
what
on
time?
at 8:30.
8:30. Okay. So we'll take it up then.
Okay, so just for the plan, if you have any, so that's what we want, you want us to update the monument, the marker to the way maybe the commission like. So Joyce, if you have it, maybe just shoot me an email, say just 4x4, 3-foot or 4-foot concrete monument buried 2.5 and leaving 1.5 up. And then the marker on the top, and if you have any
Yep.
language you'd like to do, otherwise we would say as ordered, because if we can reach in a
I'll
consensus.
send you a detail.
Yeah, if you,
She'll give you
yeah,
some
if you
detail,
have it,
Shane.
yeah, we can use
Yep,
it. So
she will
then it
give
will
you
be,
some detail.
yeah, it will
Okay.
be more, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
appreciate it. Yeah, that will make the plan more complete and no questions.
Okay, thank you. All
All
right.
right, thank you.
We do really have to move on. Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you all.
All right,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, running a little bit behind here. I'm keep trying to make up time and I'm going the wrong direction. All right, so I'm reopening our notice of attend hearing into Coolidge Crossing or 8486 Coolidge Street. So for those folks in attendance for that, welcome. All right, so let's see. Where we left off was Matt Byrne from BSC was going to draft some conditions. We were going to try to make some progress in getting somebody set to work on special conditions for stormwater. We've done that. And then obviously I know that Matt Byrne had received some feedback from Matt Leitner today on those special conditions. And then I think we were also looking for some augmentation to the landscaping and the O&M plan. Is that a good encapsulation of what we are, where we were and where we are starting this evening?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, great. I know that we've seen something come over on the landscape and O&M plan. I did not get a chance myself to review it. I think it came in, recently. I just didn't. But I guess what I'm wondering is I think for just the way to handle tonight and try to make as much progress as we can, I think it may make sense for Matt Byrne. Do you want to go through the conditions that you've written? Also, I don't know if you want to respond to the submittals from the applicant regarding the whatever materials they submitted as well, if you've had a chance to review them.
Sure.
Okay. Jean, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just again, for the record, I wanted to state that I missed the last meeting, and in order for me to vote, I would have had to listen to the recording of the last meeting, which I have done.
Okay, thank you, Jean. All right. Matt, go ahead.
Great.
I'll turn it over to
Sure.
you.
Thanks, Neil. Matt Byrne, BSC Group, peer review consultant for the commission. If I could just give a kind of high level, top level punch list that I've reviewed with Matt Leitner, and just kind of I think where we stand. We've got my draft special conditions that everyone has seen at this point. The Baystone group has responded to those. And Neil, you took a look at those and provided a comment or two. So that's, I think we're in good shape, and we can go through the handful of special conditions that had substantive comments that we should work through, if you want to do that tonight.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the stormwater management, the stormwater special conditions, BSC engineer will get a collection of special conditions done. He was unfortunately unable to do it for tonight, but promised me Tuesday. So I'm going to try to hold him to that. We do have the landscape O&M plan that came in. Michael gave some extensive comments on those. I've reviewed both. Cindy had some substantive concerns, comments on that, so we can run through that. Matt and I spoke about the mechanisms to prevent further development on the backland, and that there was some willingness to discuss that and try to finalize that. And then I think the big thing, and we'll get into this when we go through the special conditions, is a construction monitoring arrangement. So if you want to go into the special conditions, I could share my screen if that's, if you want to see that. Okay.
Let's do that.
All right. Let me see if I can figure that out. Right. Okay. Let's see. Of course, I'm not at the top of the document. 1 second. By now, I should really be pretty adept at this. Yet here we are. Sorry.
It's like ATMs, you know, sometimes no matter how many times people go to them, it looks like it's the first time they've ever seen one.
Truly. Okay. One comment that is not captured in this document from the Baystone group was that any general conditions that are included in the attached special conditions document should match exactly, or the general conditions should be removed. I'm open to, you know, sort of revising per the commission's desires. If there are some of the special conditions, the wording of some of the special conditions that are specific to the project that you want to retain, you know, that would just need a markup, just some kind of, we just need to go through and kind of strike the ones that can go away or what have you. But that would be something for the commission to kind of think through.
Okay, so sorry, I
missed that.
Yeah, I don't think
Sorry.
I understand. I don't think I grasped what you were saying.
Yeah. So what we tend to do with when we write up a special conditions document is include general conditions that are more or less a duplication of the general conditions in Form 5. There are some discrepancies in the specific language just because of, you know, we wrote them and versus the coming out of the Form 5. So I think Baystone was asking that either that gets word for word corrected so that it reads exactly, so there's no room for confusion, or they get stricken from the document.
I see. Are the reasons for the deviation, are they substantive reasons, like things you think are important?
I think probably not. I will go back through with an eye to that and see if there's anything in there that I think is substantively important, as opposed to just kind of the pro forma inclusion.
And if you do, then maybe you pull it out and put it into a special condition versus being in the general conditions.
That makes sense. Okay.
All right, that's fine.
All right. Good. I think that I don't know who made the edit, whether it was Baystone or someone from the commission, but in special condition 6, work authorized hereunder shall be completed within 5 years. Just want to confirm that that's the intent of the applicant.
That is the applicant's comment.
Yes, that was Matt Leidner. If you could address that, please.
Yes, so we would, our understanding is that the Form 5 allows for a period of more than 3 years and up to 5 years for the work to be completed. So a project of this magnitude, this scope, and seeing that there's you know, there's time involved between getting this order of conditions and the project actually commencing. We thought 5 years would be a reasonable time frame for the work to be completed. So that is our comment, and we believe that the Form 5 allows for that.
Yeah, we have approved projects for a life of 5 years before.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I could, I thought you had a very good recommendation. Is why wouldn't we just stick with the pro forma Form 5 for the general conditions, and if there's anything that's in this revised sort of modified version that's important, just put it in the special conditions so we don't need to reinvent the wheel in this form.
Yep, I think that's a good route, and so I'll work through and just make sure that we do exactly that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Special condition 12, Sherborn Conservation Commission reserves the right to impose additional conditions on this project, including but not limited to additional or modified erosion and sedimentation controls during construction, if it deems the site conditions warrant such measures to mitigate potential impacts. The applicant felt that was too open-ended and wanted to discuss rewording.
So is the concern that it's so open-ended that it allows us to do anything at all in response? And it's not it's not bounded by, specific things that address erosion and sedimentation? Is that the concern?
Yes.
Okay.
The concern is, it's so broad-ended. We could be in the middle of construction, and what happens if there's a condition that's proposed that we can't either meet or makes the project not constructible? Normally, I've never seen a condition like this before. I have seen condition where a board will say, if for some reason during construction, if your erosion control, sediment control is not sufficient, then you will come back to the board and make sure it becomes sufficient. I have no problem with that.
So Matt Byrne, is this condition aimed specifically at things like erosion and sedimentation control?
Yeah, if during the course of construction it becomes clear that the plan at the outset isn't working or what have you, that's kind of the intent to revisit that.
So can I make a couple of suggestions? So I think in the first sort of phraseology before the comma, right to impose reasonable additional conditions on this project related to erosion and sedimentation control, that might sort of do the trick, because it contains it to erosion and sedimentation, and it also puts, legally speaking, when you put reasonable in there, then some of these sort of doomsday scenarios where you stop the project or make it economically infeasible are not really in play, because that's legally speaking not reasonable. Would that suffice for what the applicant is looking for? And Matt Byrne, do you think that's okay?
Yes, from my standpoint.
Okay.
Through the chair, if we could ask Matt Leidner if he's okay with that.
I think that sounds very reasonable to me. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Should the applicant return to the Conservation Commission for review as needed, or just leave it as that?
You mean in the context of this condition?
Yeah.
So
Well, through the chair, if I could, because we're going to have an environmental monitor, if it comes to that person's understanding that we have insufficient controls, I'm sure that'll be brought up to the board, which will bring us back to the board with how we plan to remedy that situation.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. There were some edits made to number 14. I don't think those are all fine. Let's see. Okay. The next substantive one we get into is the construction monitoring scenario. So special condition 16 identifies an applicant's environmental monitor and provides qualifications, authority, and inspection schedule and reporting. Number 17 is identifying a construction monitor working on behalf of the Conservation Commission, hired by the commission, paid for by the applicant. So I realized, that's not an insubstantial cost to the project. I was at the last meeting, I said that I'd try to do some research on kind of what an order of magnitude looks like for that, as far as BSC consulting services go. And I'm not getting a good good answer on that because it's so project specific. We don't have any ongoing contracts that kind of are directly comparable to what we're looking at. So, as far as just kind of very, very ballpark ideas, a construction, because of the size of the site and the amount of work being done, and there isn't wetland mitigation going on, probably looking at one, a day of a half day of monitoring, half day reporting and communication with applicant and commission. So, it's on the order of a day a week. And, so if it's 8 hours a day, at, I don't know, what the fee would be, but $100 an hour or whatever it would be. That kind of gives maybe an order of magnitude. I think that the commission would want to put together a scope and an RFP for that. But that would be, kind of a very rough ballpark.
Can I ask a question just so I can try to frame the way I'm thinking about it? Are the duties of, in 16 and 17, are the duties of the environmental monitor that the applicant hires and the commission environmental monitor substantively the same, or are they very different?
No, I think they're substantively the same. I think there's a lot of overlap there, and assuming that the qualifications meet your expectation, the monitoring schedule is robust, and I think the challenge might come in the communication and relationship with the commission. But I think if that can get sorted out and agreed to, it feels to me like that accomplishes what needs to be accomplished by having.
Because in my mind, one way to mitigate the cost is just to have one monitor. Now, obviously, the commission would be interested in having that monitor be reporting and sort of working on behalf of the commission. So I don't know if there's, in a project of this size, if there's a need from the applicant's perspective for an environmental monitor that serves some other purposes outside of the commission's purposes. But if not, I could see it just being one person that, the applicant approves of. I have no problem with that. It's not to be reasonably withheld, the approval, but, otherwise is the same arrangement as the commission monitor, which is it's hired by the commission, paid for by the applicant, and the rest of it stays the same. So I just wanted to ask the applicant about that.
Well, if I could opine on that matter, it's very common that when we have consultants working for us like this, number one, it's controlled construction, so people's licenses and careers are on the line. So they may be working for us, but the truth be told, they're working for us and for you because it's their license on their line, it's their reputation on the line. So I would propose that if we're allowed to hire a firm, we'll get your okay to the one we choose and let them report to both of us on a weekly basis. There won't be anything where we're getting ahead of time and we tweak it, make sure it's the way you like it. We'll both get it at the same time. So it's not biased in any way, shape, manner, or form. I mean, frankly, I'd like to hire someone like Matt Leidner's firm for a couple of reasons. One, he designed it. Two, he's responsible for its implementation being done correctly. And I think, with his reputation and honor on the line, he's not going to do anything for us or to the town that's not going to be inappropriate.
So I guess my response to that would be, and this is, what people's integrity is aside, and I would never question anybody's integrity, and I don't have any intention to do that. But always when you have, depending on who that person reports to or is hired by, it's sort of, their responsibility to serve the interests of that person. And there can be times when the interests of the commission and the interests of the applicant are going to conflict. And when you have somebody with sort of split sort of responsibilities from a reporting perspective, I guess I worry about that a little bit.
Well, I can understand that concern, but at the same point, I would argue, if someone has been responsible with stamped design drawings, we're talking about erosion control, we're talking about slopes, we're talking about stormwater, we're talking about drainage, and for them to be on site, probably, for instance, let's say it's Matt's firm. By the way, Matt Byrne, I have no idea why someone would be there 8 hours a day, once a week. I could see 2 or 3 hours to make sure things are okay, but to stand around for 8 hours.
No. No. A half day site visit and a half day of reporting and communicating with the client. And
I guess what I'm saying, and the reason I'm thinking someone like Matt's firm, we're going to be paying his firm anyway, because they're going to be out there doing site work in terms of making sure the topographies are correct, the grading is correct, the stormwater, et cetera. And I would argue you're going to get more bang for the buck if we engage his firm, because he's going to be out there more than once a week, number one. And number two, if things aren't going exactly the way they're supposed to be per plan, they will get adjusted immediately in the field with a contractor because of their direct oversight in a more comprehensive way than just an environmental monitor coming by 2-3 hours a week. Think about it. If you come by even for a half a day, there are 4.5 other days that no one's seeing anything. Well, with Matt's firm being out there more often because of all the work we're doing, I think, frankly, you're getting a lot more bang for the dollar and more information.
I can, yeah, sorry, Michael.
No, you can.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt Byrne, and then Michael.
I was just going to say, I don't have a ton of experience with this. And so, take that for what it's worth. But what I have seen is construction sites where, the erosion controls on the site get into disrepair over the course of 3, 4, 5 years. And it's just not a high priority for the contractors. And so it's, we on our action log, these repairs show up every week, and we log week after week the erosion getting past the controls and what needs to get fixed and all that. So I totally appreciate what you're saying. I get it. I understand that. But in practice, my experience thus far has been that it doesn't play out as that way.
May I make a couple comments?
Matt, if I could say one thing to that, I understand what you're saying, and I've seen a lot of job sites exactly about what you're saying. But I will say this, I don't think we've come across a more diligent conservation commission than this one, number one. Number two, we all know this is a very large project, relatively speaking, for Sherborn. And I think that if there's any project that's going to be under a microscope, if you will, relative to these issues, is this one. So we are very, very cognizant of the fact that these things are going to need to be maintained daily, never mind weekly. And it's incumbent upon us to have our contractors being very well in understanding that these things cannot be violated, because it basically would be a violation of our order of condition with Concom. And that's the last thing we want to have happen.
Yeah, may I make a few comments?
Yeah, please. And then, but hold on one second. Michael, did you
Sure.
want to make a comment just because he had voiced his desire to do it before? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I'll repeat a little of some others, but right. I mean, for all that the engineers are going to be there where things are done, right? The erosion issues and their impacts are temporary ones. They're not a matter of something that has to get stamped and approved in a drawing. So it's sort of like two different issues here. These are temporary disturbances that don't affect, let's say, with some final stamped plans. I mean, it's a whole other issue for me of that whole issue of that all this stormwater stuff is done properly and certified, given their outflows to wetlands. But just dealing with erosion control for the moment of that, yes, our experience is that there are sites where stuff just gets left for a long time. We're still seeing that in another large site. And that I'm trying to struggle with whether there's some sort of compromise, because right, the cost, I mean, the idea of right, if somebody's there for an hour a week of, or an hour or two a week over a year, 1 hour a week, if it's $100 an hour times 50 weeks, that's $5,000. It's 2 hours, let's say, to do some reporting. It's somewhere for $5,000 to $10,000 a year for a project that's fairly large. I'm trying to think of whether there's a compromise of whether your on-site people might give us weekly reports, but maybe we have somebody on call who basically goes out there every 2 weeks, and after rain events of possibly 3/4 or 1 inch of rainfall in a 24-hour period, that there's some sort of, that we still get some level of independent oversight on this issue, because you're working totally around wetlands. That maybe there's a middle ground in terms of for the cost, and we still get the weekly reports from whoever you want to deal with, but we have something that's maybe every 2 weeks in a rain event. There's some sort of middle ground to find in this issue.
I would say, through the chair, we'd be happy to give you weekly reports. That's not a problem. And I will say, we take site pictures all the time. So another thing I should bring up is, you're well aware of, the Concom has the right to come by the project anytime they want. So it isn't like, and we're on a main busy street, it isn't like it's tucked away somewhere. So I think weekly reporting, we can send you pictures now and then again to show you the progress. And of course, the Concom can come by anytime they want.
Right. So just to respond to that, while I appreciate what you're saying, and everybody has the best intentions when a project starts, but we have to exercise whatever caution we need to, essentially, as if we don't know you and don't know anything about the project. We have to make sure that we have to ensure that these things are in place, and we're reporting regularly on it. When you put it on the commission itself to go out and to make an overt effort to go and look, we are always short-staffed and not enough resources. And that the reason for having a monitor devoted to commission, to focus on commission stuff, is just because we need more than just having the commission go by periodically. But I do want to, Matt Leidner, you wanted to also make a comment, so I don't want to skip over you just yet. And Cindy,
Yeah.
I saw you had your hand up before, so I'll come to you after. Go ahead.
Okay, can I go?
Please.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think this discussion really started with the idea of if the roles of what would be the applicant's construction monitor or environmental monitor and the commission's environmental monitor are basically overlap and are pretty much the same. Is there a way to consolidate it to save costs? And the idea initially that I heard from you, Mr. Chair, was, if that's the case, perhaps the commission could choose an environmental monitor subject to approval from the applicant and paid by the applicant. And that would be the environmental monitor. So to that point, I think the challenge with that is that the applicant has to have somebody that they employ on site to monitor and keep track of the construction. So at the end of the project, that person can certify and submit an affidavit that it was constructed substantially according to the plan. And if there's anything that deviates, document whatever deviates. So the applicant's going to have somebody doing that work on the site routinely to monitor things. But then the point was made, I think, by Mr. Lesser, that, okay, well, that person's really looking at the final build out of the final stormwater system, and not necessarily the construction stormwater and erosion controls. Because the certification at the end of the project is that the project was built according to plan, but not necessarily about what happens during construction. So that was the concern there. I think what might be getting lost in this conversation is that I don't know specific projects that you're referring to that the erosion controls have sort of been forgotten and neglected, but I would imagine that many projects, most projects in Sherborn do not trigger the NIPD's general permit just because they're smaller projects. So this project does. So this project is required to submit and obtain coverage under NIPD's general construction permit for land disturbances greater than 1 acre. What comes along with that is routine inspections, and there's a few there's two choices you have in the NIPD's permit for how often you do your inspections, but one of them is weekly inspections, and that is to monitor the status and document any issues with the erosion and sediment controls during construction. It's only during construction. It has nothing to do with the final build out. It just monitors during the erosion controls during construction. And there's very specific procedures outlined in that NIPD's permit that when the inspector goes around, if there's anything that is not in compliance with the NIPD's permit or needs maintenance, and there's very specific maintenance thresholds outlined in that permit, then that gets noted on a weekly report. There's a corrective action form that has to go into the SWIP. So it's very specific and it's very well documented. And so in my conversations with Matt Byrne since the last hearing, I had expressed that, while it's not required and not typically done, we would be, we might not even be that person, but whoever that person is, Baystone would be happy to have those weekly reports sent over to the commission, any corrective action forms, status forms, anything like that relative to the SWIP sent over. So that being, if that were to be the case, then the commission would be getting weekly reports, would be getting documentation of any corrective actions that need to take place. And because of that, it just seems unnecessary, and duplicative for the commission to hire a separate environmental monitor. But because of the reasons I outlined, because it's subject to NIPD's, because after construction, there's site affidavits, there's as-built certifications, that person really has to be employed by Baystone. They can't be employed by the town and still serve those other functions. So, we're trying to strike a balance, but, to us, I think, that seems very comprehensive. And in terms of, sites going for years and the erosion controls being neglected, that can't happen with this site because it's also subject to NIPD's. So, any inspector that goes around, if there's issues, has to document it. And in speaking with Matt Byrne, we've committed to the more frequent NIPD's schedule, and Baystone will commit to that, which is the weekly inspection, so that the most frequent inspection or inspection frequency in NIPD's is weekly inspections. So Baystone will commit to that, and above and beyond that, Baystone will commit to weekly inspections and within 24 hours of any rainfall of a ½ an inch. So it's actually, they're committing to something even more stringent than the NIPD's requirement in terms of their inspections. So that you would be getting a report at least weekly on this site. So, all that being said, I think this may be different than other sites that you're accustomed to dealing with, just because it does fall under that NIPD's threshold. So I would ask that you please consider that as well.
And through the chair, if I could comment on Michael Less's comment.
Sorry, Mr. McDowell, just before you do that, Cindy, one of our commissioners, was waiting quite a while ago to just make a comment. Let me just, if you don't mind holding your comment for a moment, I'd like Cindy to be able to chime in with what she wanted to add.
Thank you.
So I just, I wanted to say, Neil, you had what you said prior to what Matt Leidner just talked about was right on target. So in my previous life, my experience has been exactly what you stated, Neil, which is everyone can have the best intentions, but sometimes things fall by the wayside or things are missed. And I've seen that. I've seen that in other towns, and then I've also seen that here, and I've seen that here on large projects. You know, people have the best intentions up front, and then things just don't happen. I mean, we've all seen that, I think, on this board. So I feel pretty strongly that we need representation for the Conservation Commission with this role, with this monitor. Because it's been my experience over and over again. And we are volunteers, and we're always short-staffed, and we don't have the time to be going out and checking the sites ourselves. Additionally, I would just say, I'm sure there's some way that we can work this out from a financial. I understand there's a financial ramification of this, and I'm sure there's something that we can work out. But there is definitely, again, this is based on experience. When you're hiring somebody and you're paying for that person, or they're working for you, let's just say, it's a very different product than if you know, they're working for somebody else. So I would just, you know, this is sort of a reiteration, but in different terms than how Neil said it, but it's essentially, I'm agreeing with what Neil said before Matt Leidner just spoke.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cindy. Mr. McDowell, did you want to?
Yes. In response to what Michael had to say, if you use the parameters, even if the half-day parameters that Matt Byrne was speaking of, you're not looking at $5,000 to $10,000. You're probably looking at the cost of $50,000 over the course of the construction of the project, and it's just an unburdened. Say again?
It will be double that. It's per year.
Well, it's a very large sum of money, which would be very burdensome for an affordable housing project. And I just feel with everything Matt said relative to the NIPD's permit and the requirements that we have for that, weekly reporting to the town, even giving the town weekly photographs of what's going on around the perimeter of the wetlands. I mean, I think it's sort of belt and suspenders and sitting down relative to, I think, what we're doing. We're just really concerned about the escalating costs and the fact that we're double doing these certain things.
Right. And so here's what I'd say. I do appreciate the applicant's input on this and understand what you're saying. What I will say is this, is that I'm not convinced that somebody looking at it through the commission's eyes and that what the commission's concerns are with respect to the 8 interests of the act is you have to have, there is a separation of sort of duties to what you're supposed to perform. And I don't have an issue with a construction monitor or environmental monitor working on behalf of the applicant to make sure that they do the things that they have to do with NIFTIs and everything else. What I think is more productive, frankly, use of our time would be if there's a lot of sort of work product that comes out of the environmental monitor that the applicant has to use, and really kind of to Michael's point, I think originally, and we can find a way to have a person or a firm to review that material to reduce costs. Like, I think what I'd want to almost do, and this may take a little bit more work, would be to really understand what that environmental monitor working on behalf of the applicant is going to be doing and what work they're going to be producing, and understand, really maybe have Matt Burns sort of look at that work product and say, okay, well, here's where we can take what they've done and sort of have reasonable assurance that it's accurate, or be able to go back and sort of ask questions or periodically visit the site. I'm trying to figure out what is a way that, because I understand I don't want us to be overly burdensome on the financial side. I get that, economically feasible, it's a 40B, I get all that. But we still have the interest of the act that we have to have somebody of a project of this size dedicated toward reviewing in some way. And so what I'm trying to figure out is how can we minimize what that person, that advocate, or that consultant working on behalf of the commission would have to do to keep your costs down, while at the same time looking out for the interests of the act as the construction goes on. And I'm wondering, just from Matt Burns' perspective, if you think that that's some kind of a marriage we can make to kind of control costs.
That's a pretty reasonable suggestion, I think. You know, a peer review, essentially a peer review of the reporting that comes out of the construction monitor would be a short look. Once you get familiar with what's going on, I think that would be a relatively quick task. But it would be a trained eye looking at, hey, you know, can you provide some additional information on, you know, additional views of the landscape here, you know, whatever. Yeah, that seems like a reasonable way to really contain the cost, but still cover the interests or concerns of the commission.
Okay.
Through the chair, could I recommend that we table this for now? And if we could have Matt Leidner work in conjunction with Matt Byrne to see if we can come up with something that's mutually acceptable that meets with the board's approval.
Roy, may I just add that this is our 6th meeting, and this is taking a long time and doesn't seem like we're making a lot of progress. And as you know, the budget on this is extremely tight, especially with bringing water and sewer and everything else that it requires. Every dollar counts on this project to be able to make it happen, and it's tight, very tight.
Thank you, Ms. McDowell. I understand that and respect that, and I've made it a sort of concerted effort not to waste anybody's time, but a project of this size in a town this size that has, you know, has its own groundwater protection and other environmental protection that's particularly vital. We just go through the steps we've got to go through, and for a project of this size, we're pay particular attention to it. And so I don't know.
I appreciate that, but are you okay with my suggestion of having Matt and Matt work with each other to come back with something hopefully is acceptable to the board?
Yes, and the only thing I was going to do was just solicit the input of any commission members if they're comfortable with that approach. I'm comfortable with that approach. You know, our consultant, I think, understands sort of exactly what our focus is, and I think both Matts have worked well together in other elements. So I can't imagine a different result on this one. So, but other commission members, are you also comfortable with that? Michael, are you trying to comment?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, since I feel like there is a way to sort of have a more limited oversight. But also what might be part of that process is to better understand, for us, I guess, maybe the NIPD's permitting reporting process that might basically accommodate many of our concerns with a much more limited oversight. And appreciate that you're doing the weekly, that you're basically proposing that kind of stuff. So I would agree with this approach.
Okay.
I agree with Michael.
Okay, thank you, Courtney. Cindy, what do you think? Because you voiced a concern as well.
Well, I guess I'd need to see what comes out of it, but I will tell you, Neil, from past experience on another conservation commission, I strongly feel that the commission, the town, and the Wetlands Protection Act needs our own monitor. That's from my experience. I mean, I know everyone's their own individual person and everyone has the best intentions, but I have just experienced otherwise.
Right, and look, my goal here is to try to hybridize, have somebody who is a specific advocate for the commission's interests while leveraging the work and the money that's being expended to produce sort of valid, accurate feedback on the state of the construction site at any one time. So I think we can get there. All right, any other comments from commission members or anybody else, frankly, for that matter?
Yeah, I just, I think it's a good suggestion that Matt see what they can come up with. I just wanted to point out to them that they have the opportunity to bring us something very quickly because we're meeting a week from tonight. So if it's feasible for you to, work together on this, we could actually, and if we could get a chance to look at it before the meeting, that would be wonderful. But there is an opportunity a week from tonight to finalize this.
Okay.
I guess my question, if I may, Mr. Chair, if you've had big projects come through the town that have been subject to NIPD's, what do we need to talk about? It's subject to NIPD's. You've had experience with that. I'm happy to talk to Matt. I'm not saying I won't talk to him, but why are we dragging that out? You're familiar with NIPD's. We're familiar with NIPD's. Matt's familiar with NIPD's.
We are not that familiar with it.
Okay, that's not what I heard earlier. But I'm in terms of you've had bigger projects in town that were over an acre disturbance.
For the chair, maybe Matt Leidner can send you a detailed breakdown of what the NIPD's permit looks like so we can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm trying to do is get the information about what is involved with that and how that dovetails with what we would want out of commission environmental monitoring, and that's what we're trying to do. So
I will also say that in the draft conditions, the frequency of inspections and the half-inch was all kind of predicated on the idea that we would go with one environmental monitor. So I think in my discussions with Matt, I think that's kind of on the table, has to be on the table in terms of, how that works out and which kind of schedule we end up fitting into.
All right. I'd say, Matt, why don't we have a conversation in the next couple of days and try to hash it out. And next week we can either put an idea on the table for the commission to consider, or conclude that we don't have an agreement.
I'm happy to do that. I really don't have much more to offer, but I'm happy to have that conversation.
Great. Let's do that. Okay.
Let's plan on doing that. Great.
Okay. Matt Byrne, do you want to pick up and keep going?
Yep. Let's see. There were a couple of things that are stormwater related that I really kind of want to leave to someone that actually does that. Erosion control bond. The applicant figured out what a bond figure was, and then stated that a performance bond statement wasn't necessary. Personally, I don't know the answer. I don't know if that actually obviates, if the one obviates the other. So I think that's something to decide whether or not condition 23, the performance bond, should come out or stay in.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, please.
So I think typically if this were, say, a subdivision project where the town ultimately is going to take possession and ownership of certain infrastructure or roadway, that a performance bond is certainly appropriate in that case. So I think the idea is that if for some reason, mid-construction Baystone were just to no longer be, they walk away, whatever, something happens, and you're left with a site that's not stabilized, then you want to have some funds to be able to come in and hire somebody to stabilize the site. I don't think that you would necessarily complete the build out of the project. I would think that your concern would be wherever it's at on that day, stabilize it from there. And so we feel that the erosion control bond is what would accomplish that, and that the performance bond is more appropriate for a different type of project, but not a private project like this. So that was the purpose of our comment on that.
For the chair, if I could also comment. Sure. This is kind of redundant because I assume you want a performance bond to make sure the work is performed correctly, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, just to be clear, whenever we build a project of this magnitude, we bond performance bond the entire project. No bank will lend us money in a project that we haven't gotten a performance bond from our contractor for the entirety of the project. So in fact, there will be a performance bond in place to make sure that the project gets done and gets done correctly.
Roy, that's a separate type of bond. This is
No,
one for
no,
the,
but it's a bond to get the work complete. If your concern is getting the work complete, that's what the performance bond is from our contractor.
I mean, is that something that the commission would feel comfortable just having proof of?
So Matt Byrne, just a question for you. So this performance bond condition, so is this is for just the stormwater to make sure it's constructed correctly?
I think that would be your primary interest, yeah.
So because if it's, I mean, if you have a performance bond for the entirety of the project and the stormwater is contained within it, you know, that it has to be constructed as planned, I guess I can see it being redundant. I don't know, Matt Byrne, do you think that's the case, or is there some special sort of reason why we'd want to put a performance bond on the construction of the stormwater system itself?
I think I don't have an answer for that, honestly.
Okay.
Why don't we ask the stormwater guy and put this
Yeah.
off?
Yeah, that makes
Okay,
sense.
that's not a bad idea. I mean, look, I would say this, if it's redundant, we don't need it. If it really is like, if the performance bond for the whole project is a superset and this is, you know, one element of it, fine, we don't need it. But that's fine, we can ask the stormwater person when he comes online to build those conditions.
Great.
Okay, what's
Okay.
next?
Protection of mature trees in the buffer zone. This was one of the special conditions that the applicant wrote, which is good. We talked about having that. I wasn't real comfortable with with the applicant believes are worthy and capable of being protected. I'd like to have the commission have a role in that conversation. So I think that the commission's agent, or you know, somehow the commission should be represented in that process of identifying trees that ought to get additional protection.
So did this condition come in, is this a condition that's somewhere in the comprehensive permit and we've pulled it into here? Or?
No.
No, okay. So, all right, but this is something that the applicant has agreed to, but it's just worded in a way right now that it just makes it up to the applicant, and you're suggesting we modify that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just so that, you know, it could be that the applicant identifies trees that are going to that should get additional protection, and you just get an opportunity to take a look through it at the pre-construction meeting, or, you know, what have you.
Okay.
But I think we just need to change the wording a bit, and I just want to see how that landed.
How does the applicant feel about that?
May I make one comment? If the wording does get changed where the commission has a role in that, I would suggest to the applicant that they consider asking the commission that it only apply to trees within their jurisdiction. So not the entire limit of work, just.
Of course. Yeah, I think that's a given.
Well, it would only be trees in their jurisdiction.
Right.
My concern is there could be trees where the root system is going to get significantly damaged because within our development area, could be in the slope. You know, you bury tree roots by 2 feet, I'll tell you right now, the tree in 2 years is dead.
Yeah, yeah.
So the question becomes, whose final judgment is that, and how much time does that delay things in the middle of doing things? And, you know, obviously it's to our advantage to leave any mature trees we can, because frankly, it enhances the project. I mean, my background's in landscape. And so I'm not going to be taking trees down for the sake of taking trees down. But at the same time, if the tree is either going to be damaged, injured, or long-term be a problem, we do want to take it down.
So what I would say is this, just as I think if we put in words that reasonable, reasonable agreement with an expeditious time frame, we will not be holding up your project.
What
Is that
wording
okay?
changing are you suggesting?
No, I'm not suggesting any wording, but just let's use words like reasonable, reasonable input, expeditious consideration, and that's it. Is that okay?
But it's still the ultimate decision is by the applicant.
You
I
can
mean, that's
say,
the crux of the matter is whether,
well, I think the mechanism that was suggested was the applicant would identify them, this is what Matt Byrne, you said. The applicant would identify them, then the commission would weigh in a reasonable and expeditious fashion, and that would be that. I mean, I think, I don't see it as I think if you put words like that in there, it's legalistic enough to be protective of both while not impeding, just sort of the impetus of trying to get the project done. That's my opinion, but, I don't know, Matt Byrne or the applicant, if you have other feelings about that, please express them.
I'm not quite sure how to respond because until you see the actual circumstance with which you're talking about, it's hard to know.
Well,
are you saying, Neil, who has the ultimate decision? We can weigh in on it, but are you still saying that it's still the applicant that would make the final decision despite what, based on our input, or you're saying that our decisions are final? That's the crux of the matter.
No, I don't want to make our decisions final in this particular kind of context. I really don't.
Right.
I don't think that doesn't make a ton of sense.
So you just want to have commission input.
Yeah.
Essentially, and all you want to say is police are worthy, capable. The commission will be allowed input on this decision, and then your language, basically.
Yeah, in consultation with the commission to be, reasonably agreed upon in an expeditious time frame. And Matt Byrne, if you think that sort of serves the purpose you're trying to get at, then let's just do that.
Yeah, that is what I'm trying to drive at.
Okay,
through the chair, if I could understand this a little more clearly.
Sure.
So once we delineate the limit of work area, which is frankly where we're going to either fill or cut or whatever too, you're saying it's outside of that area, correct?
Yep. Any additional trees outside of that are large and should get additional protection.
Well, the only additional protection they would get is fencing around them.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're limiting ourselves potentially to that, given your wording, I think we're okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's what we've been talking about.
I think, we can over-exercise a lot of these issues.
Right. Right.
Okay, next.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I think this 32 probably snuck in from a erroneous cut and paste, so I think that can go away. Let's see, on 34, I think you made you modified that, just say only approved alteration or activity. That seems fine.
Yep.
And stockpiles, you are correct. That statement about 120 feet from the slope, that was should have come out. So that will be corrected. And then, yes, this special condition, again, the applicant's environmental monitor. So that will likely change once we sort out what the story is going to be.
Which one, Matt, are you talking about?
Number 4 here, the numbering got wonky. The applicant's environmental monitor shall provide full review of as-built plans. The final statement was not agreed to, and that said, at your discretion, you may have a request for a certificate of compliance reviewed by a peer review consultant at the applicant's expense. So I think that since we're revising, we're going to come up with a different plan for the environmental monitor relationship. Let's see how that plays once we get there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does.
Okay. Let's see. Number 42 is a discussion that I mentioned earlier about mechanisms to prevent further development of the backland. So we can get to that. And then the vegetation management recommendations. I left that unwritten because we hadn't seen the O&M, the revised O&M yet. And then finally, the last special condition was about annual reporting. The applicant indicated that was overly cumbersome. I think that's something for the commission to think about what you want for going forward perpetually, whether or not you feel some form of reporting is required, or if once things are good and certified and you're happy, that's that. So that's something I think for the commission to make a decision about.
Could I comment on that through the chair?
Sure.
We've never had to do something like this. I mean, it's literally in perpetuity. What if we would agree to, once the project is complete, we receive our C of O, that we give you a report 1 year after that, and after that, we will stay with the operations of a maintenance plan. I'm not quite sure why we need to be annual reporting on something that's complete and after 1 year is still in the condition it was supposed to be in.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
I'm just one.
Just one. Matt Byrne, what are your, so this is your condition, right? Is this something you typically put into projects of this type and size?
It does get included, yes. And I think that, there are circumstances where I'm sure it gets pushed back and so forth. I think that's kind of at the town level.
We've never seen that before.
Well, yeah.
Doesn't the long-term pollution prevention plan involve continued reporting?
The long-term O&M plan involves continued inspections and maintenance, not submitting reports. So it involves long-term or operation and maintenance of the system in perpetuity.
Do other commissioners have an opinion about this?
Well, not being familiar with the reporting required under the landscape O&M, but taking you at your word, I would say that maybe that's enough. I liked Mr. McDowell's suggestion of a report within a year of receiving the certificate of occupancy, and then going forward, just relying on the landscape O&M.
Thank you.
I had a hard time hearing Matt Leidner and what he was saying. I think I heard him say, although I'm not sure, that number 52 here is more of a reporting function, where Matt Leidner was saying what he was talking about was more action-based. I'm not sure, because I had a hard time hearing him.
So if I may, Mr. Chair.
Please.
The operation and maintenance plan that's been submitted and is part of the record and is referenced in the conditions here requires for each stormwater BMP, and they're all listed out separately, it requires a specific inspection and maintenance requirement for that particular BMP. And that is supposed to be in perpetuity. So, but there's no reporting required under that. It's an inspection and maintenance at a certain frequency depending on the BMP.
So can I make a
Thank you.
Can I make a slight? The only thing I'd love to build in would just be an element of this condition, which would say that if the commission were to, essentially wanted to solicit sort of information about what the results of the last sort of round of maintenance were, or something like that, that, that they could make reasonable periodic requests for that information. It doesn't have to be any formal report, but just have a way for when if the commission wanted to periodically check on it, that they could.
I believe you can do that anyway, but that's fine.
Okay. Okay.
If you just make it a written request.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. What else do we have to cover?
Landscape.
Landscape, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the landscape O&M, and I do not have the figure open. Let me see if I can grab that real quickly.
This is the same landscape O&M from the last meeting, correct?
No, it's been modified.
Oh,
So Mr. Chair, can I just give a brief overview of what we've done since last meeting?
Of course.
Okay, thank you. So at the last meeting, the discussion was that it would be helpful to have a color-coded figure to go along with the O&M plan to show the areas that are proposed to be a certain level of maintenance or a certain frequency of maintenance. And so what we did is we developed a color-coded figure showing areas that are proposed to be, weekly maintained lawn and garden area, and then areas that are only occasional mowing, so annual mowing, the invasive management area, and then areas where no maintenance at all is proposed. So after the project, it's just let to go back to grow, and nothing done with it. So we updated the landscape O&M plan to include that figure, and also to, in the text part of the O&M plan, to reference the figure and reference the different areas. We call them area A, B, C, and D for the different levels of maintenance. So we reworded the text of it to reference this figure as well. So the plan is we built upon the plan that was shown at the last meeting to include this additional breakdown of the different areas.
And Matt and I went through this in detail on the phone a few days ago, and I think it looks really good. You guys can see the plan here. This is the color-coded figure. I think it's functionally, from a standpoint of being clear and communicating where different treatments are occurring, it's very good in that regard. Matt, do you want to kind of walk people through quickly with this exhibit up?
Sure. If I may, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
Okay. So the light green area is the area that's proposed to be maintained frequently. So the lawn areas, the gardens, and such. Then the orange shaded areas comprise the perimeter areas that will not be maintained regularly, but will be maintained. So it's primarily the stormwater basins, the berms that form the stormwater basins, and then the wildlife corridor that we had designed to cut through the site between buildings 1 and 2. That area as well, we're not proposing to maintain regularly, but we think it would be appropriate and beneficial to come in once a year and cut and remove that vegetation and then let it grow back for another year, and do that continuously. So that's the orange areas. The yellow area is also, we're proposing annual mowing, but that's the invasive species area, primarily the buckthorn that we had talked about. We shaded it differently because the plan there that we talked about last time was doing an initial brush hogging in that area and then coming back annually and cutting it and doing it at a time of the year which would be best for keeping the invasive species to a minimum and beneficial to the other species that we want to sort of try to take over there. So that's the yellow area. And so that yellow area is bounded by the limits of the project on the left side and the bottom. And then the other areas, there's an existing tree line there. Going up there and then across the top. So, of course, we're not proposing to go into that tree line at all, just up to it. And so, but I just wanted to explain that's what set the boundary of that on those two edges. And Matt Byrne and I talked about perhaps on the final plans of record, we could provide GPS coordinates of the corners of that, so that if for some reason in the future it becomes unclear where that should be cut up to or not, there'll be coordinates that can always be reestablished out there if need be. So that's the yellow area. And then the purple lines with no color within them are the areas that we're proposing not to touch after construction. So they'll just be most of them aren't going to be touched even during construction, but there are some areas there that are within the limit of work, but those areas will just be let to go back to nature after construction. And again, the written part of the document references these areas A, B, C, and D.
Yeah. So I've gone through the written document. I had only a couple of things I wanted to ask about. On page 2 in the mowing and trimming cleanup, number 5, when there's dead plant material, plants that are 50% or more dead will be removed. I wondered if that should be replaced. So that was one comment. On spring cleanup, I didn't know what liriope, I don't even know how to pronounce it. I found it online. So is that a plant that you're going to be using in the landscaping?
We can check on that.
It's a ground cover. It's called liriope, and it's not native.
That may have been a carryover from a different project.
I think it was. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at the plan list right now. I believe it was. We can take care of that.
Okay, great. And in resource areas, no, general, what was this? Oh, you had your final condition in the general block here is about any fill brought in, be clean and uncontaminated. And I wondered if that included clean of invasive plant material.
I took that language from the comprehensive permit and just kind of put it in there. So
I'm not so sure. I don't believe the testing would including testing for various types of plant material. But it's obviously incumbent upon us to not want that. That's the last problem we need.
Yeah, right. And I think you've got fairly robust, long-term maintenance and prevention of new invasives and prevention of invasives. So I think that's fine if that's just kind of a standard condition that you brought in. That we can leave it at that as far as I'm concerned. Those were my concerns. Michael had a number of things to discuss, and Cindy was concerned about the use of hybrids and cultivars in the plant stock that gets selected. So with that as a, I think that's our last substantive thing to get into. So I see Michael's hand up, so I can step back and.
Sure, Michael, would
If
you
you
like to
wanna-
go ahead?
Or you could deal with the cultivar thing since it's a small one, maybe.
Whatever you want to do.
Before you go through my list. Is the
Well-
cultivar straightforward?
Yeah, I mean, so I was just wondering where they source their plants from. And, I mean, I guess, well, before I even get into that, so you said that the liriope is a carryover, but no one ever said that it was going to be eliminated. So are you taking that out?
Would you like it taken out?
It's not native.
It's not even on our plan, so yeah, we can delete that.
We can delete that, not a problem.
So we were just talking about, and you guys said that you would do natives. I was just wondering where you source those from, because there's many nurseries will use cultivars. They won't use straight native plants.
It was from our landscape architect, gave us the original language.
Pardon?
Our landscape architect provided us the original language. And it must have been from something else that they had used those plants in.
Are you referring, what are you referring to right now?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were referring back to the layer pars.
No.
Oh, all right, sorry.
No, just in general, I was wondering where you source your plants from, because we had talked about, you guys agreed that it would, you would, use native plants. And I was just wondering where you source those native plants from, because many times nurseries will have cultivars that are natives, but they're not straight natives. And
I know the
impact.
plant material is coming from Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends, we bid it out to a number of nurseries, so they're competitively bid process.
Okay, so they're probably not necessarily grown without pesticides and neonics and all that.
Can that
How
be
do other
included as
commissioners
a,
feel? How do other commissioners feel about this topic that I'm raising?
Matt Byrne, were you going to say something?
I wonder if that can be included as a, in the contracting for seed source and plant source, if the, prohibition on neonectids and, raised in with pesticides can be included as a requirement in the contract.
Adding additional cost as well.
You've had that landscape plan for months. I believe this is the first time I've heard this. You can have plants that are native to the area, like taxus or Mount Localmia latifolia or Roseum elegans or Rhododendron maximus, things like that, which are indigenous to this area, but there are hybrids of some of these plants. Take Western Nurseries, they created the PJM in Hopkinton, Massachusetts, but it came originally from a Carolina rhododendron.
So I'm just wondering, how do other commissioners feel about these?
I'd like to weigh in. I see where Cindy is going with this. It's pretty well understood that if a plant is not just a straight up native, but has been hybridized or cultivated and has a slight variation due to that, that those, as opposed to straight up natives, will not function and support wildlife as well as a straight up native does. So, for example, from the planting list that you provided, there are only a few examples of cultivars, but they are the Acer rubrum, anything that's got something in quotation marks after the genus and species name. Those are cultivars. So I support Cindy's idea that we would rather that you used only the straight up natives. And then as far as whether the nurseries apply pesticides or not, it's really not that difficult to find nurseries that now will guarantee that they do not spray their plant stock. And but if that is too difficult to acquire plants where the nursery can guarantee that, then I would hope that it would be covered in the order of conditions that anything that was planted in our jurisdiction would not be treated. So I think ideally the plants would not be coming to the site having already been treated, but if that's not possible, then making sure that they are treated once they're planted would be desirable. But just one thing I wanted to point out on this plant list, and forgive me for not commenting on this, but I have been away a lot in the past couple of months. There is one plant on the plant list, Tilia cordata, which is not native to the United States. It comes from Europe. It's the little leaf linden, and you listed it as your intention is to plant 9 of them, which is a pretty high number. So I'm hoping you can replace the little leaf linden with something that is native.
You know, they're planted all over New England, correct?
Oh, I know that.
Okay. Listen, I'm meeting with Wayne Mezza tomorrow morning. He owns Western Nurseries, and they do a lot of plant propagation. They're quite knowledgeable plant material. Let me bring up the issue of cultivars, non-native and native plant material, and get his perspective. And I'll report that back to this board next week.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, Michael, I just had 2 really quick comments before you start. Is that okay?
Sure.
So one is a question. Is there in any of the plans, the most recent set of plans, is there a detail drawing of the wildlife tunnel?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me, you don't have to pull it up now, just tell me what page it's on because I couldn't find it.
Yes, bear with me one moment. I'm just going to pull it up on my other screen. I'll tell you what.
And there's a description of it, and the O&M is in the long-term PPP.
Yeah, I saw the verbal description of it, and that was very good, but I did want to lay my eyes on a detail.
Okay, so it's on sheet 11, which is one of the construction detail sheets.
Yeah, so you're talking about the scale that we're looking at right now. I was hoping to see something that was, you know, like a cross section or something like that. Is there no such plan like that?
The wildlife tunnel we're talking about, correct?
Right.
Yes. On sheet 11, there is a detail of the tunnel structures, including a cross section.
Okay, good. I'll look at it then. Thank you.
Okay.
Just one comment about the wildlife tunnels and their once a year, their annual inspection. I'm going to ask this of Matt Byrne. Shouldn't the timing of the inspection and any possible cleanup and maintenance of the wildlife tunnel be done at a specific time prior to when any migration would start?
Yeah, I think that would be ideal. You know, if you'd want to make sure that it wasn't clogged up over the winter time before things get rolling in early spring.
So March, by the end of March, are you thinking, or?
Late February.
Late February. I'd like to request that that be put into the description of the inspection, please.
So just to make sure I understand, you're not questioning the frequency of it being annually. It's just that the timing of it should be such that it happens before the migration.
That's right.
Okay.
Those are my comments.
While we are on the wildlife tunnel, I just have one quick question, because I think I misunderstood where this wildlife tunnel would start and end. It's much longer than I thought it would be. It's starting way up by, if you can pull up the buildings.
40 feet long.
Is this one okay?
Yeah. So doesn't it end kind of halfway up building 2? Do you see if you go
No.
Okay, because it looked like there was a funnel out at the other end, halfway up building 2.
It's not all tunnel, so the tunnels are only across, the longer of the 2 tunnels goes across the site driveway or the road.
Yeah.
That tunnel, which is the longer one, is 40 feet long. But has in that 40-foot length has grates on top to let in light and moisture and air. And then there's a shorter tunnel because there's a sidewalk that's sort of disconnected from the street. It's not right against the street. So there's a separate tunnel under that sidewalk, which is 12 feet long.
All right, thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
Through the chair, before we go any further, it would be very helpful if someone could email us a list of the plants that they have a concern with. And that way we can verify that with our landscape architect.
Okay.
That before tomorrow?
If you could, that'd be great.
Or do you want to just run through it verbally, quickly, so that,
Sure, we can do that too. I'll write them down.
is that something others are prepared? It's not my area, but whether we could just do that since he's meeting tomorrow, whether people are willing to do that quickly.
Well, as I said earlier, the plants that are hybridized or have cultivars are the ones that have another name tagged onto them beyond the Latin genus and species. So, but it's hard for me to read this because when I printed this out from my computer, it's blurry. So starting with the trees, Acer rubrum has a word after it that I can't read, but Acer rubrum without that qualifying other word is the straight up. The next.
It's
sorry,
bohol.
Bohol.
Okay, and tell me what the next tree is because.
Acer rubrum red sunset.
Well, red sunset is just a type of red maple that it is.
Right, it's a cultivar. A red maple does not have another name tagged onto it if it's a straight up red maple.
I'll have to check that out.
So it's only those 2, and then down to the list of evergreen trees, the Thuya occidentalis says emerald green after it. That's a cultivar.
And your concern with the cultivars is what?
That when they are genetically manipulated, so nurseries play around with the genetics of plants to make them either brighter green or more upright or what have you. And in that process of genetic manipulation, it changes some of the qualities of the plant from the way it occurs in nature. And in doing that, it's been pretty well documented that when they are altered, they serve fewer functions than they do in terms of wildlife than they do when they are just straight up without cultivation. So I hope that was clear.
I will try and get verification or clarification relative to this tomorrow.
There's just one other plant on the list.
2 others, I think, Jean.
Okay, flowering trees. There's the flowering cherry has a cultivar name next to it. And then yes, down at the shrub level, the Ilex glabra has shamrock tacked onto it. And so that makes it a cultivar as well.
And then you mentioned the Tilia cordata, which is
Tilia cordata is not a native tree.
right.
So, yeah, some of these are not native, but are they outside of jurisdiction? Like, so there's a tree lilac and.
We can go through the plan tomorrow and see which ones are within jurisdiction, and if so, how many are in or how many are out.
Yeah, like the Japanese tree lilac is not native.
Is there any other besides that, Courtney? I didn't think so.
I'm not sure about that prunus. Is that I don't know if that's a native prunus. And not sure about the hawthorn off the top of my head.
So I just want to know how far we are from being at the end of what we can discuss tonight, because we
I
are,
think I'd like to, I have a list of things that hopefully you could just run through.
well, I understand that, but we are now running past our, we have a request for certificate of compliance. Because the thing is, Michael, you produced a long list, which is very helpful, but it was also circulated today. So the problem that we have is we're running out of time and
Well,
the
others-
applicant hasn't seen it.
No, they've seen it, and it's just a list of questions, just like anybody else raised a bunch of questions. I would like to think that we could just plow through so that we can maybe get closer to completing this. I don't think we could table things that seem to take more time, and maybe on
Well,
my list or not.
again, I understand what you're saying. We have to be cognizant of time as well. We have other hearings coming up. So how long would it take you to quickly go through your list with them?
We'll find out.
Well, that's not,
I can't tell you other than the fact that I'd like to try it, to do it. We could see how well it goes.
all right, well, if we can do it in 5 minutes, I think that's reasonable. Otherwise, I don't feel comfortable with it. We try to stay on a schedule for everybody.
Well, okay, whatever. I guess somebody's pulled up the thing there. I guess I'll focus on, there's a few little things above that I think we should put in the permit of putting in conditions from the CBA thing. Like, I'd like to see the fill and the stumps and the de-icing chemicals conditions that came out of the ZBA comprehensive permit also repeated here, so that they're not lost in other things like the landscape maintenance plan where there's fill. I think the fill, stump, and de-icing chemical things could be moved. Just, that's a simple thing, just to move them in as special conditions.
Can I just say, if I know
Yeah.
we're pressed for time, that just remember that the ZBA permit is also under the local bylaw, wetland bylaw. So it sort of is already in the wetlands permit.
I somehow I feel like the order conditions should just have it, but if it's such a big deal, I think it's not a lot of extra words, but it doesn't get lost because it's sort of buried in the O&M. But whatever, it's my preference. I would suggest that we do it. The invasive management is the buckthorn area. When you specify the just going to walk through that landscape plant issues. You could call that whole area that's yellow. I guess, is there a specific area of buckthorn brush hogging? That's
The
not that
whole
area?
thing is
The whole yellow.
The whole thing is
Okay.
buckthorn.
Fine, I couldn't remember how that's done there. Then the only issue there is that, so I guess then we don't have an issue. If the whole thing is the buckthorn, I couldn't remember if that whole yellow is, then I guess we don't have a scheduling issue other than you just got to cut it all. Moving down to the mowing schedules from areas B and C. I guess for Matt Byrne or anybody, do we want to have any scheduling for when those things are mowed? Is there any issue for that being just mowed whenever they want? And whether the clippings are there, just a little nitty gritty.
I think we discussed mowing area C, the meadow area, when it was right before the berries bloomed or something along those lines.
No, that's a different area.
With the stormwater basins, which is
Yeah, we're
primarily.
talking about areas B and C, I think are different, I think. If I
Yeah, C is the meadow area.
C is the meadow
Okay,
area.
then I meant
A and B.
yeah, then I meant B. I guess basically it's B. Excuse me.
So B, which is mostly the stormwater areas, although there are some areas outside that, but they're predominantly the stormwater areas. That's typically done at the end of the season. It's cut in the fall, the vegetation from the stormwater areas is removed, so it doesn't seal the bottom of the system or clog the outlets. And then it's just left to grow for the full next growing season, cut that fall, and just ongoing, it's cut in the fall.
Okay, do we leave the cuttings? Do we care whether we leave the cuttings or not?
Well, in the basins, we do not
have
leave
to
the
dig.
cuttings. Other than outside the basins, we don't care if we leave the cuttings.
Okay.
I'd leave them on the outside of the basins. Anywhere you can leave them, it's good for wildlife.
Right.
So I would.
So basically, we could just add to the O&M plan that you're going to leave the clippings behind outside the basins. I guess for area C, at what point I guess we're always trying to manage C for the berries versus the animals. Okay.
Until you get a handle on it, hopefully.
Yeah, right. The native buffer areas east of building 2 I can't remember what is the landscape, what's put on the plans in terms of what's the herbaceous level or the ground level. Is that specified somewhere besides some shrubs and trees? Or maybe I didn't know whether that was
the
covered.
native buffer east of building 2 in yellow area C. So that's going to be that specific restoration wildlife mix.
It wasn't clear to me whether that's fully specified as to what's there.
It is. Yep. On the landscape plan, that is a specific seed mix to be in that area.
Okay, I guess it's
Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, is it on? Oh, is it on the? I didn't see on the plan whether they had a seed mix for that area.
It does.
Okay. I didn't see it there. Then the shrubs, basically trees and shrubs should be replaced, I guess. Basically, we often have a condition about that some percentage that we just need to say whether you have a specified number of plantings there. Are we going to require that 3/4 are done like we've done after 2 years and things are replaced?
Matt Byrne, if I'm not mistaken, I thought you had a condition in there regarding the 2 years.
Yeah, I thought.
But all replacement of 100% replacement? I can tell that I don't remember seeing that. Okay, 2 years and full replacement. Okay, as long as there's something there, that's fine. Just check. Then I have a few little things about changing some of the areas here. You could see whether that area there as to why that area is green.
You're correct on that, Michael. You're correct on that. That area between the purple line and the orange basin there, that should have been orange, and we'll update that. You're correct. That's not intended to be maintained there, other than yearly mowing.
And then continuing to the second picture, it looks like there's an area of no maintenance that was graded and then seeded, and then it looks like the same kind of area wraps around sort of the upper left of that area there, where that should also be included, because that seems like it's the same type of seeding and makeup, whether that should be also a little changed to no maintenance. If you see what I mean, how that curves around.
Are you suggesting there's something that's shaded orange right now that you're thinking should not be orange?
Yeah, it could be no maintenance. It's a continuation of the no maintenance.
Oh, well, okay, so I think I understand your comment. The reason that it's in the orange zone is because we need to have maintenance of the full berm for the stormwater basins inside and outside the basin.
Oh, unlike the berm behind the buildings.
Right, which doesn't matter. We can have saplings and trees grow up there. It doesn't matter. But the berm of the basin, you can't have woody vegetation take over.
Oh, even on the far side of that. Okay.
Even on the far side, because the roots will run through the berm and can actually cause berm failure over time. So, yep, that's the reason for that.
Gotcha. Moving on to the third picture, which is by the other area there. I couldn't tell if I couldn't see what was going to be whether you just need to specify the seed mixes there that I didn't think was specified. That's missing, I think.
Okay, we can check on that. I think that's just specified as the general seed mix for the
Well,
lawn.
usually we have seed mix one, or basically 2, or whatever the ones are above.
Right.
Like it's a seed mix 2 or something like that.
And that's in the easement as well, I think, of the Eversource
It is.
easement.
We'll take a look at that. Okay.
Yeah, so basically you need to flesh that out.
Yep.
And do that there. Then we already discovered the BAF there, the pesticide. In the O&M plan, except to me, okay. I wanted to add the word herbicides and pesticides. I also sent you a copy of the O&M plan with my edits. There are a few of them are old, but there's a few little there, but it's missing and pesticides in one of the plans there. In the revised plan, it's acceptable there. I can't tell whether you care, Matt Byrne, about in the draft order of conditions we went through that the stabilization measure of 70 versus 80% that they changed. I'm assuming you found that to be acceptable. We're not gonna
Doesn't, yeah,
and some language changes from C series to area C just needs to be done in the O&M plan. But in the O&M plan itself, almost through, I guess, you've got a few comments, basically. Some of them are already been dealt with, but if you guys can just respond to a few of the track edit comments that I sent in the thing today, there's relatively few that I don't think we've already covered. Then I'm through.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Anything else we need to cover this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if we touched on briefly, but never really talked about it in too much detail, we'd like to propose in that hill area that you're concerned about future construction, that we do a deeded restriction on that. And to a point, we can have our lawyers draft it, if we haven't already, that gets recorded at the registry. So in fact, nothing could ever get built up there. Is Stephanie with us this evening?
I am.
Did we send something over to the board yet for a deeded restriction on that parcel?
No, but we can do that in the next couple days, so.
Yeah, I'd love to get that to you prior to the next meeting, so hopefully we can close this all out at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
That's it for us.
Okay. As somebody pointed out earlier, we do have a meeting slated for the 4th of November. I don't know if everybody will be ready to talk more, and I don't know if we have room on our agenda, but maybe we'll start with, do we have room on our agenda, Elizabeth?
We do, 9 o'clock.
Okay. And then will the 1 week be enough time for the two Mets to talk about the consultant or the environmental monitor and some of these other moving parts to get reviewed?
yes, for me.
Yeah, that's fine for us.
Okay. And Stephanie, it sounds like you'd be able to, in the next couple days, generate some language around the restriction.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So I
And
move
then
that
we'll
we,
get you answers on the landscape plans.
yes, and I know that you'll have that, right, you're meeting with him tomorrow. Okay. So I move that we continue this hearing to 9 o'clock on the 4th of November.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, Jean?
Aye.
Neil, aye. Sorry, Cindy?
Aye.
Michael? Michael? You're muted. Aye.
Yes.
And there he is. Courtney?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. All right, we'll see you next week, and hopefully we can bring this thing, wrestle it to the ground.
Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
right, have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, since we're running later here, it's just one of those days. We have the NOI for 211 Farm Road. We're reopening that hearing. Are we continuing again, Joyce?
Yes.
All right, I move that we continue it to 11/4 at
No, the meeting after that, 11:18.
11:18 at Elizabeth,
7:15.
7:15. Second from somebody? Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Michael? You're muted again.
Here we go again.
Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Great. All right. 10 was supposed to be a 10:20 request for a COC for 32 Peckham Hill.
I inspected that certificate of compliance. It was for a septic system, and the site is completely stabilized. And
Okay.
I recommend that you issue a certificate of compliance.
Great. Any questions from anybody?
This was an expired order, correct?
I believe so.
Elizabeth, are we collecting the higher fee for these things?
No, we are not. This one in particular, we had talked about months ago when they were selling the property. It just took longer. And this is a new owner who didn't know that it was expired when they purchased the property prior. So you guys had voted at a meeting a few months back to allow them to do it for the $200 fee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. I'm assuming I would just move to issue a certificate of compliance for this.
Second.
I would have second.
There we go. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right. We have our COC for 18 Old Orchard Road.
18 Old Orchard Road is one that we discussed a number of months ago. It's a septic system repair. It's stabilized. There's a definitive edge to the lawn, and they took a while to get their form in, but I recommend a certificate of compliance for this.
Okay. Any questions? from
Joyce,
anybody?
I do have a quick question for you. When I was looking through that file, there was like a lower lawn area.
It's not lawn. It's not lawn anymore. It's more native. It's
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you. Yep. So it's all good. I just didn't see it in the pictures, and I wanted to ask about it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 18 Old Orchard Road.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Michael? Come on. Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Hey, I didn't call on you yet.
No.
And then circle back. Courtney?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Fabulous.
Sorry, I have a bad cough, so I keep
I
muting.
know, I can see you sort of doing this when the mute is on, so I got it. I always hate like you're coughing and then the Zoom warns you like, hey, you're muted. It's like, yeah, I know, obviously. Technology. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. All right, we've got some other stuff here that is subject of discussion. Minutes, that kind of thing.
I haven't looked at it. I usually do that look and then do it, but I'd be happy not to do them tonight.
Is there anything on the discussion items that we need to address?
What is legal implications of discussion?
That's something I put on there and we're not doing it tonight. Basically, be careful what you say. That's the encapsulation of that discussion, but I was going to kind of get a little bit more into it.
I can hold off on Conservation Works update and Eagle Scout update until next meeting.
Okay, great. Joyce, do you still want to tackle the demarcation language stuff that?
So I just wanted you all to think about being consistent with markers and just developing something that people have to do. And on the sidewalk, I had brought 2 samples out of markers that Holliston has done and that Meadow have done. And both towns have decided on the plaque that they were going to use and bought it in bulk, and then in turn sell it back to the people that use it. And then it's a consistent marker. There's another alternative, and that's it's called signs.com. I sent a link, an example of what one would look like, and you can get a metal sign with holes in it and the wording painted on the metal that you're looking for. And I included a sample of that. And then the people can just get to buy their own, and they're about approximately $20 a piece. Those can be either glued to the top of a bound with the appropriate adhesive, or they could be, in the case of the request for determination of applicability, tacked on trees. So, but I think I'm going to use the word we need to do going forward is to be consistent, and leaving it up to the applicant, particularly with the determinations of applicability, I think is resulting in them not getting installed because they don't know what to do. That's all. I just wanted you all as one of my final acts.
I think it's a great idea. Joyce, do you want me to, I don't know if I can share my screen, but I took pictures of them that day on the site walk. Do you want me to bring them up so people can just look at them quickly?
Sure. I also, yes, I also post, I think there's, I don't know if it got distributed, but yes, definitely.
They're in the
Okay, let me see.
Dropbox, Joyce.
Oh, they
in
are?
the Dropbox?
Yep. They're in
Oh,
the
I didn't
Dropbox.
see them in the Dropbox. I was just in the Dropbox.
It should be.
I wonder what's going on with my Dropbox.
It's under wetland marker.
Oh,
sample.
you know what? Okay, that's why. Okay, I see it now.
So if you look in there, in the wetland, in that folder, the first one is it's a 3x5 plaque they put on top of bounds. That's Holliston. I contacted the company that they had these made of from, and they're not doing it. It's not feasible money-wise. I think that the company that made the ones that Holliston picked up, but this is a sample of what you could do. And then I also went to signs.com and priced out what it would cost to put the language on a metal marker that we talked about. And again, it's about $20, which is, you're doing 5 signs, it's $20. The ones that we buy from Holliston are $5 a piece because again, they bought it in bulk. And the ones in Meadow were round, and you could pretty much do whatever design you want. It cost, I have the price in there that it cost bulk. I called the company and asked them for a quote. And if you decide to buy them in bulk, then at least you have a consistent marker that you're putting out. And they're, again, both of them cost about $5 a piece. That's all. I just wanted to, I do firmly believe that concrete bounds for projects like Lot 2 would be expected from an applicant, not necessarily on determinations of applicability or even for septic systems that are notices of intent.
So I'm sorry, I tried bringing those up, but I'm not able to do it for whatever reason and share it, but I was trying to share it with as you were talking about them. I think it's a great idea. I think it offers a lot of consistency. I don't know what others think.
I agree. I think being consistent makes sense. I've been promoting that idea for a couple of years.
And I also think it'd be easier for folks in town to just, get them right from us and not have to go searching all around and reworking the wheel every time.
So I don't know if you look at the round ones, the Needham ones, they're kind of unique and they're kind of, they catch your eye. They would do very well on top of a monument. That they are used countrywide for marking things like catch basins on they glue them onto the pavement and they have some that have lasted for 20, 30 years. And I don't know, I mean, they would go very nicely on a tree. You can certainly put a nail through them. I just don't know how long, I guess anything would last until someone takes it down.
Okay.
That's
So
all I wanted to get a little bit further in the discussion of coming up with a permanent solution.
So can we maybe add this to next meeting's agenda so we can talk about it again and have like more discussion?
I'll see if I can't get a bulk rate for the metal ones for the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Shouldn't be a discussion at 10:30 at night, though.
So we have to decide on the exact wording and whether we like metal or plastic.
At least work in the direction. I mean, I'm not saying you need to make your
Agreed.
determination next week, but work
Would
in
be
the,
nice, yeah.
in the proper
Okay,
direction.
excellent. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.
All right, anything else that we need to talk about besides AAs?
Was there a warrant, Neil?
I don't know. Elizabeth, is there a warrant?
There is a warrant.
Curses.
It had postage and, did it postage? It had the, no, not postage. It had the job posting and I forget what else was on it. WB Mason, I think.
That's right. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a
You're
mitzvah you've just performed. All right. AAs?
I don't have the list in front of me. I can't open it up again. If someone lists them, I can tell you what.
Are they accurate on the agenda?
Yeah.
38 Farm Road, 111 Coolidge Street, and 62 Maple Street.
Yeah, 38 Farm Road was just a portico over the front door. I don't remember the number you said again.
111 Coolidge.
111 Coolidge. Oh, that was the farm. They're putting an addition on the back of one of their buildings. I measured the wetlands in all directions, and they were outside the 100.
And then 62 Maple Street.
And that was a distribution box, and it was outside the 100 foot.
Okay. All right. Well, without further ado, I move we adjourn.
Good night.
Second.
Thank you, Joyce. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, Neil, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
All right. Anna, you lasted the whole meeting. Good job. That's right.
Thank
Good
goodness.
Well, look, I mean, I would like to say that this is atypical, but it's pretty typical. And, you know,
It's
even
pretty
if it's not
typical.
if it's not Coolidge Crossing, which is a big monster project, so there's a lot to talk about. Sometimes there's just a pileup of smaller ones. But anyway, we get through it. We try to have fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Anna. And obviously, Gina and I will talk to you tomorrow, but then we'll be, on the clock officially next week.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome aboard.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Night.
Bye.